Please, he whispered to a deity he'd never acknowledged. Take anything else. My empire. My life. Just don't take her. His daughter had 3 months to live. Maybe less. And the woman arriving at his estate in 6 hours, the stranger he was about to trust with everything, would either save Yuna's life or become the weakness that destroyed them all. He just didn't know which yet. The most dangerous man in Seoul was on his knees in a hospital chapel at 4 a.m., and he didn't even believe in God. Park Ji-hoon, the man who controlled the Korean underworld, who made politicians sweat and rivals disappear, had his head bowed and his hands clasped like a child learning to pray for the first time. Welcome to Afro Korean Tales and Stories, the home of Afro-Korean love stories where passion crosses cultures and hearts learn new languages. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to powerful, emotional stories between Black women and Korean men, filled with romance, tension, longing, and moments that stay with you long after the story ends. And to our returning family, welcome back. Your love, comments, and support keep these stories alive. Before the story continues, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale. Now tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what part of this story is already pulling at your heart? Let's connect. Let's feel the story together. 18 hours earlier, he'd built his empire on one unbreakable principle: control everything, or lose everything. At 34 years old, he controlled the flow of money through Seoul's underground networks. He decided who lived, who disappeared, and who learned expensive lessons about loyalty. His surveillance systems tracked rivals across 3 countries. His men moved like shadows, efficient and silent. Politicians returned his calls. Enemies learned to fear his silence more than his threats. Ji-hoon's world operated on rules, precision, and absolute emotional restraint. Weakness got you killed. Sentiment made you a target. Love was the fastest way to lose everything you'd built. He'd learned that lesson young and never forgotten it. But then Yuna was born, and everything changed. His 8-year-old daughter was the only crack in his armor. The only person who made him feel something other than cold calculation. She had her mother's gentle spirit, the woman Ji-hoon had loved and lost to his world's violence. And every time he looked at Yuna, he saw both his greatest love and his deepest failure. Now she was dying, and all his power meant nothing. Mr. Park, we need to talk. Dr. Kim's voice cut through Ji-hoon's thoughts as he stood outside the observation window of the pediatric cardiology unit. Inside the room, Yuna slept surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, keeping her alive one heartbeat at a time. She looked impossibly small against the white hospital sheets. Oxygen tubes in her nose, for lines trailing from her thin arms. Monitors tracking every struggling beat of her failing heart. Ji-hoon didn't turn around. He knew what was coming. You didn't survive in his world without learning to read the energy in a room before anyone spoke. Tell me, he said flatly. Dr. Kim moved to stand beside him, both men staring through the glass. Her ventricular function is deteriorating faster than we projected. The medication isn't providing the support we'd hoped for. Meaning we're looking at surgical intervention within the next 3 to 6 months. Possibly sooner. Dr. Kim pulled up a tablet, showing graphs and numbers Ji-hoon had taught himself to understand over 2 years of hospital visits. But even with surgery, her recovery will depend heavily on her emotional state. Her will to fight. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. She's 8 years old. She shouldn't have to fight. No, she shouldn't. But that's the reality we're facing. Dr. Kim's voice softened. Mr. Park, Yuna's condition is complex. The congenital defect, the complications from previous procedures. Her heart is exhausted. She needs more than medical care right now. She needs stability. A structured environment where she can rest without stress. Something bitter twisted in Ji-hoon's chest. Stability. Everything his world wasn't. His estate was a fortress. Armed guards patrolled 24 hours a day. Surveillance cameras covered every angle. Business happened in soundproofed rooms at all hours. Deals made, territories negotiated, problems solved with violence when necessary. It was no place for a dying child to find peace. What are you suggesting? Ji-hoon asked, though he already knew. A full-time caretaker. Someone trained in pediatric cardiac care who can live on-site and provide round-the-clock support. Someone who can be there when you can't. Someone who can give Yuna the kind of emotional care that might make the difference between her giving up and her fighting through this. Every instinct Ji-hoon had screamed against it. He didn't let strangers into his home. He didn't trust outsiders with anything that mattered. His empire survived on secrecy, and bringing someone into his private world meant opening doors he'd spent years keeping locked. But then Yuna shifted in her sleep, her small face pinched with pain even in unconsciousness, and the choice became simple. Find someone, Ji-hoon said quietly. I already have. Dr. Kim tapped his tablet. Her name is Naomi Carter. American. Pediatric cardiac specialist with exceptional credentials. She's been working private care cases in Seoul for the past 6 months. Every family she's worked with has given remarkable testimonials, not just about her medical skills, but about her ability to connect with the children. To give them hope. Send me her file. Mr. Park, Dr. Kim hesitated. This only works if you let her do her job. That means trusting her with Yuna. Trusting her judgment. Giving her the space and authority to provide the care your daughter needs. Trust. The one commodity Ji-hoon never gave freely. I'll review her background, he said. If she's acceptable, she can start immediately. Dr. Kim nodded and left, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Ji-hoon stayed at the window, watching his daughter sleep. The monitors beeped steadily. Each sound a reminder that Yuna's life was measured in heartbeats, and those heartbeats were running out. He pressed his palm against the cold glass. He'd built an empire on never showing weakness, on eliminating threats before they became problems, on maintaining absolute control. But love had made him vulnerable in ways no enemy ever could. 3 hours later, Ji-hoon sat in his surveillance room, his temple of control, studying the dossier his head of security had compiled. Naomi Carter, 28 years old. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Bachelor's degree in nursing from Emory University. 4 years at Children's Hospital Atlanta in the pediatric cardiac unit before requesting a transfer to Seoul 6 months ago. The credentials were impeccable. References glowing. Background check clean. No criminal record, no debts, no red flags. But something bothered him. Why did she leave Atlanta? Ji-hoon asked. Kang Min-jun, his head of security and one of 3 people he'd trust with his life, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. Personnel file says personal reasons. No specifics. I can dig deeper if you want. Do it. Everyone had secrets. Ji-hoon needed to know hers. He studied her photograph. Dark skin. Natural hair pulled back in a simple style. Eyes that looked directly at the camera with unsettling calm. She wasn't smiling. Just looking. Like she could see through the lens. Most people who worked for him showed some nervousness. Some awareness of who he was and what he was capable of. This woman looked like she didn't care. She arrives at 8 tomorrow morning, Min-jun said. I've arranged the usual security protocols. Full surveillance, phone monitoring, background tracking. Ji-hoon nodded absently, still staring at those calm, unflinching eyes. Ji-hoona. Min-jun used the informal address from their childhood. You look like hell. When's the last time you actually slept? I sleep. 2 hours at a time in that chair doesn't count. Min-jun's voice was quiet but firm. The doctors are right. Yuna needs this. She needs someone who can focus entirely on her. Give her the kind of care you can't provide while running everything else. You can't do this alone. I've managed so far. Have you? The question wasn't cruel, just honest. Because from where I'm standing, you're barely holding on. Yuna needs more than a father who's drowning. She needs someone who can teach her how to float. The words hit harder than Ji-hoon wanted to admit. After Min-jun left, he switched one of the monitors to show Yuna's bedroom at the estate. She'd been released from the hospital that afternoon and was sleeping now under the watch of a night nurse. She'd kicked her blankets off again. Ji-hoon stood and walked through the silent halls of his fortress, past security checkpoints and armed guards, until he reached his daughter's room. He dismissed the nurse with a gesture and carefully pulled the blankets back over Yuna's small frame. Her eyes fluttered open. "Appa! Sleep, little one. I had a bad dream." Her voice was so small, so tired. "I'm here now." She smiled faintly, reaching for his hand. He took it gently, feeling how delicate her fingers were. How fragile everything about her had become. "Someone special is coming tomorrow," he said quietly. "To help take care of you." "Like the hospital nurses?" "Better. She's going to stay with us. Be here whenever you need her." Yuna's eyes brightened slightly. "Will she play with me?" "If you're strong enough." "I'll be strong, Appa. I promise." The innocent determination in her voice nearly shattered him. Ji-hoon stayed beside her bed until she fell back asleep, her hand still holding his, her breathing evening out into something almost peaceful. Tomorrow, a stranger would walk through his doors. Someone who would see too much. Someone who might ask questions he couldn't answer. Someone who would live inside the world he'd spent years keeping hidden. He didn't trust easily. He didn't believe in miracles. And he certainly didn't believe in letting outsiders close to the only thing he loved. But Yuna was dying. And Park Ji-hoon, the man who controlled Seoul's underworld, who had never bowed to anyone, was willing to risk everything to save her. His empire. His secrets. His carefully maintained control. Even if it meant opening the door to the one person who might destroy it all. 6 hours later. That's how Ji-hoon ended up on his knees in an empty hospital chapel at 4 a.m., whispering prayers to a god he'd never believed in. The surveillance cameras couldn't see him here. His men didn't know where he'd gone. For the first time in years, he was completely alone and completely vulnerable. "Please," he whispered again, his voice breaking in the darkness. "Take anything else." His phone buzzed. A message from Min-jun. Carter's car just entered the city. ETA 4 hours. 4 hours until the stranger arrived. 4 hours until he handed his daughter's life to someone he didn't know and couldn't control. Ji-hoon stood slowly, wiping his face, rebuilding the mask he wore for the world. The king of Seoul's underworld had just admitted he was powerless. And in 6 hours, he would meet the woman who could either save everything, or become the weakness that destroyed them all. Naomi Carter had seen fear before. She'd seen it in the eyes of parents watching their children fight for life. She'd seen it in hospital hallways at 3 in the morning. She'd seen it in her own mirror after the worst night of her career, the night that made her leave Atlanta and everything she knew behind. But she'd never seen fear quite like what she saw in Park Ji-hoon's eyes when she arrived at his estate. Not fear of her. Fear for someone. That told her everything she needed to know. The estate was exactly what she'd expected. High walls, security cameras, men with earpieces stationed at every entrance. The kind of place where secrets lived and died behind locked doors. Naomi had been briefed. Park Ji-hoon wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous. Connected. The kind of man whose name made people lower their voices. But dangerous men didn't scare her anymore. Dying children did. The head of security, a man who introduced himself simply as Min-jun, escorted her through the main entrance. His eyes tracked her every movement, cataloging, assessing. She was used to that too. Being a black woman in Seoul meant being watched, being studied, being measured against expectations she'd never asked to meet. She'd learned to meet those stares with calm indifference. "Mr. Park is waiting in his office," Min-jun said, his English crisp and formal. "He'll want to speak with you before you meet Yuna." "That's fine." They walked through hallways that felt more like a museum than a home. Expensive art on the walls. Marble floors. Everything perfect and cold and controlled. No toys scattered around. No children's laughter echoing through the rooms. No warmth. Naomi's chest tightened. This was no place for a sick child to heal. Min-jun stopped outside a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. "Come in." The voice from inside was deep, controlled, carefully empty of emotion. The door opened, and Naomi got her first real look at Park Ji-hoon. He stood behind a massive desk, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked manicured gardens. Tall, lean, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. His face was all sharp angles and controlled expressions, handsome in a severe, untouchable way. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Dark, exhausted, carrying the weight of someone who hadn't truly slept in months. She'd seen those eyes before. On every parent who'd sat beside a hospital bed, watching monitors and praying for miracles. Ms. Carter. He didn't move from behind the desk. Didn't offer his hand. Thank you for coming. Mr. Park. Naomi walked forward with steady confidence, stopping a respectful distance away. I understand your daughter needs specialized care. Dr. Kim sent your credentials. Impressive. His gaze moved over her with the same assessing quality as Minjun's, but sharper. Looking for weakness. Looking for reasons to distrust. 4 years at Children's Hospital Atlanta. Excellent references. Transfer to Seoul 6 months ago. He paused, and Naomi knew what was coming. Why did you leave? Most people danced around that question. Park Ji-hoon asked it directly, his eyes locked on hers like he could see through any lie she tried to tell. Naomi met his gaze without flinching. Personal reasons. That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm giving. Her voice stayed calm, professional, but firm. My reasons for leaving Atlanta don't affect my ability to care for your daughter. What matters is whether I can help her. Everything else is my business. The room went very quiet. Minjun shifted near the door, a subtle movement that suggested he wasn't used to people speaking to his boss that way. Park Ji-hoon's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or calculation. You understand the nature of this position? He asked. Live-in care. 24-hour availability. Complete discretion about what you see and hear in this house. I understand. You'll be under surveillance. Your phone calls monitored. Your movements tracked. This is for security purposes, nothing personal. I expected that. And you're comfortable with it? Naomi tilted her head slightly. Mr. Park, I'm here to take care of a child with a serious heart condition. I'm not here to judge your lifestyle or ask questions about your business. I'm not interested in your secrets. I'm interested in whether your daughter gets the care she needs to survive. She took a small step forward. So here's what I need to know. Is Yuna's room on the ground floor or upstairs? What's her current medication schedule? Does she have dietary restrictions? What are her triggers for anxiety or stress? What makes her feel safe? Park Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment, and Naomi could practically see him recalculating. She hadn't asked who he was. Hadn't asked about his power or his reputation. She'd asked what the child needed. Her room is upstairs, he said finally. East Wing. The night nurse has her medication schedule documented. No dietary restrictions currently, though she has little appetite. Stress triggers include loud noises, arguments, medical equipment. His voice softened almost imperceptibly on that last part. What makes her feel safe is... He paused, and for the first time, his control slipped just slightly. Her mother used to sing to her. But her mother is gone. The grief in those words was carefully buried, but Naomi heard it anyway. I'm sorry, she said quietly. And meant it. Park Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. He looked away, toward the windows, rebuilding whatever wall had cracked. Minjun will show you to your room. You'll meet Yuna after you've settled in. I expect daily reports on her condition. You'll get them. And Ms. Carter? He turned back to face her, his eyes hard again. Yuna is the only thing in this world that matters to me. If anything happens to her while she's in your care... Nothing will happen to her, Naomi interrupted, her voice steady and sure. Not on my watch. They stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Park Ji-hoon was used to intimidating people, used to commanding fear and obedience with nothing but a look. But Naomi had watched children die despite her best efforts. She'd held parents as they shattered. She'd learned that real fear wasn't a dangerous man in an expensive suit. Real fear was losing someone you'd promised to protect. So she didn't look away, didn't blink, didn't back down. Finally, Park Ji-hoon nodded once, a small gesture of acknowledgement that felt like a victory. Min-jun will brief you on security protocols. It was a dismissal. Naomi accepted it with a slight nod and turned toward the door. Ms. Carter. She paused, looking back. Park Ji-hoon's expression was unreadable, but something in his voice had changed. Softened. Just barely. Thank you, he said. For coming. It wasn't gratitude, exactly. It was something deeper. More desperate. It was hope. And hope, Naomi knew, was the most dangerous thing a man like Park Ji-hoon could allow himself to feel. 30 minutes later, Naomi stood in her new room, spacious, well-appointed, and under clear surveillance, unpacking her single suitcase. She moved efficiently, hanging clothes, organizing medical supplies, setting up the small portable speaker she brought everywhere. Music helped. Music always helped. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend back in Atlanta. How's the new job? Rich family treating you okay? Naomi smiled faintly and typed back. Complicated. But the kid needs help. That's what matters. She didn't mention the armed guards. The surveillance cameras. The cold, controlled man who looked at his daughter like she was the only light in his darkness. She didn't mention that she'd recognized that look. It was the same look her father had worn in the hospital, watching her little brother fade away when Naomi was 19. The same helpless, desperate love that made powerful people feel powerless. That was 10 years ago, and it still hurt to remember. It was why she'd become a pediatric cardiac nurse. Why she'd spent 4 years fighting to save every child she could. Why she'd pushed herself past exhaustion and boundaries until the night everything fell apart in Atlanta. Naomi shook her head, cutting off that memory before it could pull her under. She was here now. In Seoul. In this fortress-like estate with its dangerous owner and his dying daughter. And whether Park Ji-hoon trusted her or not, whether he liked her or not, she was going to do her job. She was going to save that little girl. Even if it meant challenging the most dangerous man in Seoul. Even if it meant breaking down walls he'd spent years building. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Min-jun stood in the hallway. Yuna is awake. Mr. Park wants you to meet her now. Naomi took a deep breath, centering herself the way she always did before meeting a new patient. This was the moment that mattered. Not the surveillance. Not the dangerous reputation. Not the cold, controlled father watching from the shadows. Just a sick little girl who needed someone to fight for her. I'm ready, Naomi said. And she was. What she wasn't ready for was how completely that little girl, and her broken, dangerous father, would change everything she thought she knew about fear, trust, and the fragile space between healing and falling. But she was about to find out. Park Ji-hoon had forgotten what his daughter's laughter sounded like. He stood frozen in the doorway of Yuna's room, watching something he hadn't seen in over a year. His daughter smiling. Actually smiling. Not the polite, tired expression she gave doctors. Not the brave face she put on for him. Real joy. And it was because of her. Naomi sat cross-legged on the floor beside Yuna's bed, a deck of cards spread between them, teaching his daughter some game that involved slapping hands and giggling when someone lost. You're cheating, Yuna accused, laughing breathlessly. I am not cheating, Naomi said with mock offense. You're just mad because I'm winning. Appa never lets me win. Well, Appa sounds like he takes card games way too seriously. Yuna giggled again, a sound so pure and unexpected it physically hurt Ji-hoon's chest. He'd been standing there for 5 minutes, watching through the partially open door, unable to move. Unable to process what he was seeing. 3 days earlier, Naomi's first meeting with Yuna had been tense. Ji-hoon had insisted on being present, standing near the window like a sentinel while Naomi approached his daughter's bed. Yuna had looked so small against the pillows. Pale. Fragile. Her dark eyes too large in her thin face, studying Naomi with the careful wariness of a child who'd learned that new people usually meant needles and pain. Hi, Yuna, Naomi had said softly, not moving closer, giving the girl space. My name is Naomi. Your dad asked me to come stay for a while and help take care of you. Yuna had glanced at her father, then back at Naomi. Are you a doctor? I'm a nurse. But I'm not here to do medical stuff unless you need it. Mostly, I'm just here to keep you company. Make sure you're comfortable. Maybe play some games if you feel up to it. I don't like games anymore. Yuna's voice had been so quiet, so defeated. That's okay. We don't have to play games. Naomi had pulled up a chair, sitting at Yuna's level. What do you like? Yuna had hesitated. I used to like drawing. Used to. My hands shake now. From the medicine. She looked down at her small fingers, curled loosely on the blanket. Everything comes out ugly. Naomi's heart had cracked a little. She'd glanced at Ji-hoon, seeing the pain flash across his carefully controlled expression before he buried it. Can I tell you a secret? Naomi had leaned in conspiratorially. I'm a terrible artist. Like, really bad. But I still draw anyway, because who cares if it's ugly? It's just for fun. Yuna had looked skeptical. Really? Really? Want to see? And just like that, Naomi had pulled out a small notebook and sketched the worst, most lopsided cat imaginable. Yuna had stared at it. Then, for the first time, a tiny smile had appeared. That's really bad, she'd whispered. I know, right? Naomi had grinned. Your turn. I bet even with shaky hands, you can draw better than that. It had taken Yuna another minute to accept the pencil. But she'd accepted it. And Ji-hoon had watched from the window, something shifting in his chest that he didn't have words for. Present day. Now, 3 days later, the transformation was undeniable. Yuna still tired easily. Still needed her medications on schedule. Still had to rest between activities. But she was present in a way she hadn't been in months. Ji-hoon watched Naomi help his daughter sit up, adjusting pillows with practiced efficiency while chatting about something. He couldn't hear the words from the hallway, just the gentle rhythm of Naomi's voice and Yuna's soft responses. Mr. Park. He turned to find Minjun approaching with his usual silent steps. You're lurking, Minjun said quietly in Korean, a hint of amusement in his voice. I'm observing. You've been observing for 20 minutes. The staff is starting to notice. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. He should walk away. Should return to his office, to the surveillance feeds where he could watch from a comfortable distance. But he couldn't seem to move. Inside the room, Naomi was now reading something aloud. A story, maybe, using different voices for different characters. Yuna was laughing again, that pure, unguarded sound that Ji-hoon had thought was gone forever. She's good with her, Minjun observed. The night nurse said Yuna's been sleeping better. Eating more. Even her color is improving. It's only been 3 days. 3 days of someone treating her like a child instead of a patient. Minjun paused. When's the last time Yuna laughed like that? Ji-hoon didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Before her mother died. Before the heart condition worsened. Before their home became a fortress and every day became a countdown. You should go in, Minjun said. She asks about you. Wants you to meet Naomi properly. I met her. You interrogated her in your office. That's not the same thing. Ji-hoon shot him a look, but Minjun just shrugged, unbothered. They'd known each other too long for formality. I have work. You always have work. Minjun's voice was gentle but firm. Yuna won't be young forever. And according to the doctors, she might not have as much time as we'd like. Don't waste what you have. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Ji-hoon took a breath, straightened his suit jacket, and pushed the door open fully. Both Naomi and Yuna looked up. Appa! Yuna's face lit up. Naomi was just reading me a story about a girl who can talk to animals. Do you want to hear? Ji-hoon's throat felt tight. I don't want to interrupt. You're not interrupting. Naomi's voice was calm, professional, but her eyes held something that looked almost like understanding. We were just about to take a break anyway. Yuna needs to take her afternoon medication. I don't want to, Yuna said, her smile fading. I know, baby girl. But you know the deal. Naomi stood smoothly, moving to the medical cart in the corner. Medicine first, then we can finish the story. But it tastes bad. All medicine tastes bad. That's how you know it's working. Naomi returned with a small cup of pills and water. Quick like a ninja, remember? Yuna sighed dramatically but took the pills, swallowing them with a grimace. Good job. Naomi handed her a piece of ginger candy, something Ji-hoon hadn't thought to offer. Now rest for a bit while I talk to your dad, okay? Okay. Yuna settled back against the pillows, already looking sleepy. Naomi gestured toward the hallway, and Ji-hoon followed her out, closing the door softly behind them. They stood in the quiet corridor, and for a moment, neither spoke. She's doing better, Naomi said finally. Her energy levels are up. She's engaging more. The night nurse's reports show improved sleep quality. I know. I read the reports. Of course you do. There was no judgment in her voice, just a statement of fact. Ji-hoon studied her, this woman who'd walked into his fortress 3 days ago and somehow brought light into the darkest corner of his world. She stood with quiet confidence, meeting his gaze without fear or pretense. Her natural hair was pulled back today, and she wore simple clothes, jeans and a soft sweater, but she carried herself with a dignity that expensive suits couldn't buy. You're good with her, he said. She's a sweet kid. Makes my job easy. She hasn't been this responsive in months. She was depressed. Naomi said it simply, without sugarcoating. Understandably. Chronic illness in children often comes with depression, anxiety, grief for the childhood they're losing. The medical care is important, but so is treating her like she's still a person with wants and needs beyond her diagnosis. Ji-hoon felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. Are you saying I haven't been? I'm not saying anything about your parenting. Naomi's voice was gentle but honest. I'm saying you've been in survival mode, trying to keep her alive. Sometimes in survival mode, we forget that living and surviving aren't the same thing. The words hung in the air between them. Ji-hoon wanted to be angry, wanted to shut down this conversation and retreat to his office where emotions were locked behind surveillance feeds and business strategies. But he couldn't, because she was right. She asked about her mother this morning, Naomi said quietly. I didn't know what to tell her. Ji-hoon's hands clenched at his sides. What did you say? That I didn't know her mother, but I bet she was someone special to make such a wonderful daughter. Naomi paused. She said her mother used to sing. That you don't sing. I don't. She misses it. Something in Ji-hoon's chest cracked open. Her mother died 3 years ago. Yuna was 5. She shouldn't even remember. Children remember more than we think, especially the things that made them feel safe. Naomi's dark eyes were soft with understanding. I'm not asking you to replace her mother. I'm just telling you what she needs. I can't. Ji-hoon stopped, the vulnerability in his own voice catching him off guard. I can't be what she needs. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Naomi took a small step closer, and Ji-hoon became acutely aware of how close they were standing. How she smelled faintly of lavender and something clean. How her presence felt oddly grounding. You're already doing it. You hired me. You're letting me help. You're here now, instead of hiding behind your security cameras. I don't hide. Don't you? The challenge in her voice was gentle, but it landed like a blow. Park Ji-hoon, the man who controlled the Korean underworld, who made grown men fear him with a look, felt exposed under this woman's steady gaze. I should go, he said, his voice rougher than intended. I have work. Mr. Park. He paused, not looking at her. She loves you. She talks about you constantly. How smart you are. How you keep her safe. How you never break your promises. Naomi's voice was soft. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She just needs you to be present. Ji-hoon nodded once, not trusting himself to speak, and walked away. But as he retreated to his surveillance room, to the safety of his screens and distance, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Naomi Carter had been in his home for 3 days. And already, she'd done the impossible. She'd brought his daughter back to life. She'd made him feel things he'd buried years ago. And worst of all, she'd made him hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you vulnerable. Hope gave your enemies leverage. But as Ji-hoon pulled up the camera feed showing Yuna's room, watching his daughter sleep peacefully with a slight smile on her face, he realized he didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, his daughter was healing. And if that meant risking everything, his control, his carefully built walls, his heart, then so be it. Even if it destroyed him. No one told Park Ji-hoon no. Not his men. Not his business partners. Not the politicians who owed him favors or the rivals who feared him. No one refused him. No one challenged him. No one questioned his authority inside his own home. Until Naomi Carter walked into his office at 11 p.m. and said the one word he never heard. No. The air in the room went cold. Ji-hoon looked up from his desk, where he'd been reviewing reports, and found her standing in his doorway with her arms crossed and her expression completely calm. Like she hadn't just signed her own death warrant. "Excuse me." His voice was dangerously quiet. "I said no." Naomi didn't move. Didn't flinch. "You can't take Yuna to that meeting tomorrow." 6 hours earlier. The day had started peacefully enough. Naomi had been working with Yuna on gentle exercises, nothing strenuous, just movement to keep her circulation healthy, when Ji-hoon appeared in the doorway. He did that sometimes. Appeared silently, watching them with those dark, unreadable eyes before disappearing again like a ghost. It should have been creepy. The constant surveillance. The feeling of being observed. But Naomi understood it for what it was. A father desperate to protect the only thing he loved. "Appa!" Yuna had spotted him immediately. "Come see. Naomi taught me a new stretch." For a moment, Ji-hoon had hesitated. Then slowly, he'd stepped into the room. "Show me," he'd said softly. Yuna had demonstrated, a simple side stretch that Naomi had modified to be heart-safe, and the pride in her face when Ji-hoon nodded his approval had been worth everything. "Good form," he'd said. "Naomi says if I keep practicing, I'll get stronger." Naomi is right. It had been a small moment. Brief. But Naomi had caught the way Ji-hoon's expression softened when he looked at his daughter. The way his rigid control slipped just slightly. The way he looked almost human. Then Min-jun had appeared, whispering something in Korean, and Ji-hoon's walls had slammed back into place. "I have to go," he'd told Yuna. "Be good for Naomi. I'm always good. I know you are, little one." He'd left without looking back, and Naomi had watched him go, something uncomfortable settling in her chest. She'd worked for wealthy families before. Powerful families. Families with secrets. But Park Ji-hoon was different. He wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous in a way that made the air around him feel charged with potential violence. And yet, with his daughter, he was so impossibly gentle. The contradiction was unsettling. Present moment. Now, standing in his office with those dark eyes fixed on her with lethal focus, Naomi held her ground. "Yuna's cardiologist appointment is tomorrow morning," she said calmly. "Dr. Kim specifically said she needs rest before the evaluation. You can't drag her to a business meeting the night before." "I wasn't planning to drag her anywhere." Ji-hoon's voice was ice. "I was going to bring her with me for 2 hours. She'll be safe. She'll be with me. She'll be exhausted." Naomi took a step into the office, refusing to be intimidated by the way he stood. Perfectly still, perfectly controlled, perfectly capable of having her removed from this estate with a single word. 2 hours in a car. 2 hours around strangers. The stress alone could. "I know my daughter's limits." "Do you?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended, but Naomi didn't back down. "Because from what I've seen, you know how to protect her physically. How to keep her safe from external threats. But you don't always see the internal damage stress causes to a child with a compromised heart." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. You've been here 2 weeks. Long enough to see the pattern. Naomi kept her voice level, professional. Every time you have a late-night meeting, Yuna doesn't sleep well. Every time she hears raised voices or sees armed men moving through the house, her anxiety spikes. Her heart rate becomes irregular. She has nightmares. This house is the safest place for her. Physically, yes. Emotionally, Naomi shook her head. She's 8 years old and living in a war zone. She may not understand what you do, but she feels the tension. Children always do. The silence that followed was absolute. Park Ji-hoon stared at her with an expression that could have carved stone. Men had died for less disrespect than she was showing him right now. Naomi knew that. She wasn't naive. But she also knew that Yuna's life depended on someone being brave enough to tell this man the truth. Even if it got her killed. The meeting tomorrow is important, Ji-hoon said finally, his voice carefully controlled. There are people who need to see that I'm stable, that my family is intact. Bringing Yuna sends a message. What message? Naomi challenged. That you're willing to use your sick daughter as a prop? That you care more about appearances than her health? Watch yourself, Ms. Carter. Or what? She took another step forward, and suddenly they were close. Too close, the massive desk no longer between them. You'll fire me? Send me away. Who's going to take care of Yuna then? Another nurse who's too afraid of you to tell you when you're making a mistake. Ji-hoon's eyes flashed with something dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. Naomi's voice softened, just slightly. Help me understand why taking a child with a failing heart to a business meeting is more important than letting her rest before a critical medical evaluation. For a long moment, Ji-hoon said nothing. Then, quietly, because if I show weakness, people die. The honesty in those words hit Naomi like a physical blow. In my world, Ji-hoon continued, his voice low and intense, perception is everything. If rivals think I'm distracted by Yuna's illness, if they sense vulnerability, they'll move against me. And when they move against me, people get hurt. My people. The families who depend on me for protection. He took a breath, and Naomi saw the weight he carried, the impossible balance between being a father and being a king. So yes, I bring Yuna to meetings sometimes. I show them that I'm in control, that my family is strong, because that illusion is the only thing keeping us all alive. Naomi's heart ached at the truth of it, but she didn't back down. I understand, she said gently. I do. But Mr. Park, Ji-hoon, using his given name felt intimate, dangerous, necessary. Yuna is strong because you've protected her. But protection isn't the same as armor. You can't make her into a shield for your empire. She's not strong enough for that yet. She has to be. She's 8. Naomi's voice cracked slightly. She's 8 years old and her heart is giving out. She doesn't have to be anything except a little girl who needs her father to choose her. Just once. Over everything else. The words hung in the air between them. Ji-hoon's expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes, something raw and broken, made Naomi's breath catch. If I don't go to that meeting, he said quietly, if I cancel because of Yuna's doctor appointment, they'll know she's getting worse. They'll see it as weakness. And within a week, someone will test me. Someone will push boundaries. And people will die because I chose my daughter over my responsibility. Then let them die. Naomi's voice was fierce now, passionate. Let them all die if that's what it takes. Because Yuna is your daughter, your child. And if you sacrifice her health, her life, to maintain control of an empire, what's the point of any of it? Ji-hoon stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. Maybe she had. Maybe in his world, love didn't outweigh duty. Maybe survival meant sacrifice. Maybe being a king meant killing the parts of yourself that wanted to be human. But Naomi refused to accept that. Reschedule the meeting, she said firmly. Or go without her. But don't ask me to help you use your daughter's illness as a political tool. I won't do it. You're refusing a direct order. I'm protecting my patient. Naomi lifted her chin. That's my job. And if you want to fire me for doing it, that's your choice. But you'll have to explain to Yuna why the person she started to trust suddenly disappeared. It was a low blow, and they both knew it. But it was also the truth. Ji-hoon's hands clenched at his sides, the only outward sign of the war happening inside him. Then, slowly, he reached for his phone. Naomi's heart hammered as he typed something, his expression carved from ice. A moment later, he set the phone down. The meeting has been rescheduled for next week, he said, his voice empty of emotion. Yuna will rest tomorrow before her appointment. Relief flooded through Naomi so intensely she almost swayed. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Ji-hoon's eyes met hers, and they were full of something dark and complicated. You just made me look weak to people who will exploit that weakness. You may have saved Yuna's health tonight, but you put a target on all of us. Naomi swallowed hard. I'm sorry. No, you're not. There was no accusation in his voice. Just tired observation. You did what you thought was right. Consequences be damned. Someone has to. Yes. Ji-hoon studied her with an intensity that made her skin warm. Someone does. The air between them felt electric, charged with something Naomi didn't want to name. She should leave. Should walk out of this office and back to her room where it was safe and professional and appropriate. But she couldn't seem to move. You're either very brave or very foolish, Ms. Carter, Ji-hoon said quietly. Probably both. People who challenge me don't usually survive it. I'm not most people. No. His voice dropped lower. You're not. The way he was looking at her made Naomi's pulse race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. This was dangerous. This moment. This man. This feeling building in the space between them. She was his daughter's caretaker. He was a crime lord. There were 1,000 reasons why this, whatever this was, couldn't happen. But when Ji-hoon took a step closer, when his dark eyes locked on hers with something that looked almost like wonder, Naomi forgot every single one of those reasons. You told me no, he said softly. And you're still alive. Disappointed. Terrified. The honesty in that single word stole her breath. Because she understood what he wasn't saying, that she'd gotten under his skin. That she mattered in a way that made him vulnerable. That for the first time in years, someone had challenged him and made him feel something other than cold control. And in his world, feelings were deadly. I should go, Naomi whispered. You should. Neither of them moved. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway, Min-jun returning from some task, and the spell broke. Naomi stepped back quickly, professionally, rebuilding the boundaries she'd almost let crumble. Good night, Mr. Park. Good night, Ms. Carter. She turned and walked out, her heart racing, her hands trembling slightly. Behind her, she felt Ji-hoon's eyes tracking her every step. And as she reached her room and closed the door, Naomi leaned against it and tried to steady her breathing. She'd just challenged the most dangerous man in Seoul. She'd told him no, and lived. But the way he'd looked at her in those final moments, that might be even more dangerous than his anger ever could be. Park Ji-hoon hadn't slept in 47 hours. Naomi found him in the hallway outside Yuna's room at 2:30 in the morning, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall and his eyes closed. For a moment, she thought he was actually sleeping. Then his eyes opened, sharp, alert, immediately tracking her movement, and she realized he'd just been resting. Still on guard. Still vigilant. Still unable to let go. Mr. Park. Her voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing out here? Listening. He didn't move from his position on the floor. She had a nightmare an hour ago. I wanted to make sure she settled. Naomi's heart clenched. She'd heard Yuna cry out, had gone in to comfort her, and thought the child had fallen back asleep peacefully. She hadn't known Ji-hoon was out here the whole time. Waiting. Watching over his daughter from the shadows because he didn't know how else to help. She's sleeping now, Naomi said gently. Her breathing is steady. Heart rate normal. I know. I checked the monitors. Of course he did. Naomi hesitated, then slowly slid down the wall to sit beside him. Not too close. Maintaining professional distance. But close enough that he'd know he wasn't alone. They sat in silence for a long moment. The estate was quiet at this hour. No armed guards patrolling the hallways. No business meetings or encrypted phone calls. Just darkness and the soft hum of security systems running in the background. Ji-hoon looked exhausted in a way Naomi had never seen before. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, shirt untucked, sleeves rolled up, hair falling into his eyes. The careful mask he wore during the day had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. He looked human, vulnerable, breakable. When's the last time you actually slept? Naomi asked quietly. I sleep. That's not what I asked. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. I don't remember. The honesty in those words was devastating. You can't keep going like this, Naomi said. Your body will shut down eventually. And then what happens to Yuna? I'm fine. You're not. She kept her voice gentle but firm. Ji-hoon, you're running on fumes and adrenaline. That's not sustainable. He turned to look at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes made her chest ache. If I sleep, he said quietly, I dream about losing her. About the monitors flatlining. About being too late. His voice cracked slightly. So I don't sleep. It's easier. Naomi had heard variations of this confession before. From parents in ICU waiting rooms. From mothers and fathers watching their children fight battles they couldn't fight for them. But hearing it from Ji-hoon, this controlled, dangerous man who showed the world nothing but ice, felt different. It felt like trust. The nightmares don't stop just because you avoid sleep, she said softly. They just wait for you. And eventually, your mind will take what it needs, whether you want it to or not. I know. Then why? Because sleeping feels like giving up. The words came out harsh, desperate. Like accepting that I can't save her. And I can't accept that. I won't. Naomi understood that feeling. That bone-deep refusal to surrender even when the odds were impossible. She'd felt it herself once. In Atlanta. With a patient she'd loved too much and lost anyway. Yuna is improving, Naomi said. You've seen it. The doctors have seen it. She's stronger than she was a month ago. For now. Yes. For now. Naomi didn't offer false promises. Didn't pretend Yuna's condition wasn't serious. But, for now is something. It's progress. And you can't be there for her progress if you collapse from exhaustion. Ji-hoon leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. How do you do it? Do what? Stay calm. Stay hopeful. You've worked with sick children for years. How do you not break? Naomi was quiet for a moment, weighing how much truth to offer. Then she decided. He'd been honest with her. She owed him the same. I do break, she admitted. I broke in Atlanta. Shattered, actually. That's why I left. Ji-hoon's eyes opened, studying her face in the dim hallway light. There was a patient, Naomi continued, her voice steady despite the pain the memory brought. A little boy. 7 years old. Same kind of heart condition as Yuna. I worked with him for 8 months. Watched him improve. Started to believe he'd make it. She swallowed hard. He didn't. We lost him during a routine procedure. Complication no one saw coming. And I couldn't stay after that. Couldn't walk those halls anymore. Couldn't see his empty room. I'm sorry, Ji-hoon said quietly. Me too. Naomi wiped her eyes quickly. But I learned something from losing him. I learned that loving them, caring about them, doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And being human is the only way to do this work without becoming a monster. The word hung in the air between them. Monster. It was what people called Ji-hoon. What he'd probably called himself. You think I'm a monster, he said. Not a question. A statement. No. Naomi turned to face him fully. I think you're a man trying to save his daughter in a world that punishes vulnerability. I think you've built walls so high that you've forgotten what it feels like to let someone in. And I think you're terrified that if you show weakness, if you admit you're scared and tired and breaking, everything you've built will fall apart. Ji-hoon stared at her, something raw and exposed in his expression. You're right, he whispered. About all of it. The admission felt like a confession. Like absolution. Can I tell you something? Naomi asked. Yes. Yuna doesn't need you to be invincible. She needs you to be her father. And fathers are allowed to be tired. Allowed to be scared. Allowed to ask for help. I don't know how to ask for help. You already did. You hired me. That's different. Is it? Naomi tilted her head. You trusted me with the most important thing in your life. That takes more courage than facing down any enemy. Ji-hoon looked away, his throat working as he swallowed. She asked about you today, Naomi said softly. Asked why you never smile anymore. Said she remembers you used to smile. Before her mother died. Before she got sick. Pain flashed across Ji-hoon's face. I can't. I know. Smiling feels impossible when you're drowning. But Ji-hoon. Naomi reached out slowly, carefully, and touched his hand where it rested on his knee. She needs to see that there's still hope. That life isn't just survival and fear. You're teaching her how to live by how you live. And right now, you're teaching her that love means suffering alone. Ji-hoon's hand turned under hers, fingers curling around hers with desperate gentleness. The touch sent electricity through Naomi's entire body. This was dangerous. Unprofessional. Crossing every boundary she'd carefully maintained. But she didn't pull away. I don't know how to be anything else, Ji-hoon said, his voice breaking. This is all I know. Control. Strategy. Emotional distance. It's kept us alive this long. And it's killing you from the inside. Naomi squeezed his hand gently. I'm not asking you to tear down your walls completely. I'm just asking you to crack them. Just enough to let Yuna see the father she remembers. The man her mother fell in love with. That man died with her. Did he? Or did you just bury him to survive the grief? The question hung in the air, and Naomi watched something shift in Ji-hoon's expression. Something break open that had been sealed for too long. I loved her, he whispered. Yuna's mother. I loved her so much it terrified me. And when she died, when they killed her because of who I am, what I do, I swore I'd never let myself feel that vulnerable again. Who killed her? Naomi asked gently. Rivals. Sending a message. Ji-hoon's voice was hollow. They wanted to hurt me. And they knew exactly how. Naomi's heart shattered for him. So you locked yourself away, she said. Made yourself untouchable. Unfeeling. It was the only way to protect Yuna. If I don't care about anything except her survival, no one can use my emotions against me. But emotions aren't weaknesses, Ji-hoon. They're what make life worth living. And Yuna needs to see that. Needs to know that her life, her existence, brings you joy, not just fear. Ji-hoon looked at their joined hands like he was seeing them for the first time. I don't remember how to feel joy, he admitted. Then let me help you remember. The words came out before Naomi could stop them. Too intimate. Too personal. Too much. But when Ji-hoon's eyes met hers, dark and vulnerable and full of something that looked like desperate hope, she didn't take them back. Why? He asked. Why would you help me? I'm not a good man, Naomi. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. I'm everything you should stay away from. Maybe. Naomi didn't look away. But you're also a father who sits outside his daughter's room at 2 in the morning to make sure she's breathing. A man who rescheduled an important meeting because I asked him to put his child first. Someone who's so terrified of losing the one person he loves that he's forgotten how to live. She paused, her thumb unconsciously stroking across his knuckles. You're not a monster, Ji-hoon. You're just a man who's been surviving alone for too long. Something in his expression cracked completely. And before Naomi could process what was happening, Ji-hoon pulled her into an embrace. Desperate, careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he held on too tight. She should pull away. Should maintain professional boundaries. Should remember that this was her employer, a dangerous man, someone she had no business being this close to. But instead, she wrapped her arms around him and held on. Felt him tremble slightly against her. Felt 3 years of grief and fear and exhaustion pour out in the quiet safety of a darkened hallway. "I'm so tired," he whispered against her shoulder. "I know. I can't lose her. You won't. Not if I have anything to say about it. Promise me." Naomi knew better than to make promises she couldn't keep. Knew that Yuna's condition was serious and unpredictable and that sometimes, love wasn't enough to save someone. But feeling Ji-hoon's heart beating against hers, feeling the weight of his trust and his fear and his desperate hope. "I promise," she whispered. "I'll fight for her. For both of you." Ji-hoon pulled back slowly, his hands still on her shoulders, his face inches from hers. In the dim light, Naomi could see every line of exhaustion, every shadow of grief, every crack in the armor he'd built. And underneath it all, she saw the man he used to be. The one Yuna remembered. The one her mother had loved. The one who was still in there, buried but not dead. "Thank you," Ji-hoon said quietly. "For seeing me. For not being afraid." "Who says I'm not afraid?" Naomi managed a small smile. "You're terrifying, Mr. Park." "Ji-hoon. When it's just us, call me Ji-hoon." The intimacy of that request made Naomi's breath catch. "Okay," she whispered. "Ji-hoon." He smiled then, just barely, just a ghost of something real, but it was there. And it was beautiful. Then footsteps sounded somewhere in the house, reality intruding on their moment, and they pulled apart quickly. Professional distance restored. Boundaries rebuilt. But something fundamental had changed between them. Something neither of them could take back. "You should sleep," Naomi said, standing and offering him her hand. "Yuna has her appointment in 6 hours. She'll want you there." Ji-hoon took her hand, letting her pull him to his feet. "Will you be there too?" he asked. "Of course." "Good." His hand lingered in hers for a moment longer than necessary. "I don't think I can do this alone anymore." "You don't have to." They stood there, hands joined, eyes locked, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between them. Then Ji-hoon stepped back, rebuilding his walls, becoming the controlled, dangerous man the world expected. But Naomi had seen behind the mask, had felt him break and trusted her to hold the pieces. And as she watched him walk away toward his room, she realized with startling clarity that she was in serious trouble. Because somewhere between challenging him and comforting him and seeing the man behind the monster, she'd started to care about Park Ji-hoon. Not as an employer, not as Yuna's father, but as a man. A broken, dangerous, impossible man who was slowly stealing pieces of her heart she'd sworn to keep guarded. And that terrified her more than anything else in this fortress ever could. Park Ji-hoon realized he was in trouble when he started listening for her voice before checking his surveillance feeds. Every morning for the past 3 weeks, his routine had been the same. Wake at 5, check security reports, review overnight footage, scan for threats. But now he found himself straining to hear the soft sound of Naomi's footsteps in the hallway. The gentle murmur of her voice as she greeted Yuna. The quiet laugh that seemed to make the entire estate feel less like a fortress and more like a home. He'd become dependent on sounds that had nothing to do with security. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever could. "Appa, can Naomi stay forever?" Yuna's question came out of nowhere during breakfast, her small voice cutting through the quiet morning like a knife. Ji-hoon looked up from his untouched coffee to find his daughter watching him with those impossibly hopeful eyes. Naomi, who'd been cutting Yuna's fruit into heart-safe portions, froze mid-motion. "Yuna," Naomi started gently. "I mean it." Yuna turned to Naomi with desperate sincerity. "You make everything better. When you're here, I don't feel scared." And Appa smiles now. "He didn't smile before you came." Ji-hoon's chest tightened painfully. He hadn't realized his daughter had been watching him that closely. Hadn't known she'd noticed the small changes Naomi's presence had brought. The slight easing of his constant tension, the rare moments when his control slipped into something almost like peace. "Sweetheart," Naomi said softly, kneeling beside Yuna's chair. "I'm here as long as you need me. But forever is a big word." "But what if I need you forever?" Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "What if you leave and I get sick again? What if?" Hey. Naomi pulled Yuna into a gentle embrace. "I'm not going anywhere right now, okay? You're stuck with me. Promise." Naomi glanced at Ji-hoon over Yuna's head, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. She couldn't promise forever. They both knew that. This arrangement was temporary. Professional. Naomi had a life beyond these walls, beyond this family, beyond the dangerous world Ji-hoon had pulled her into. But watching his daughter cling to Naomi like a lifeline, watching the way Naomi held her with such genuine tenderness, Ji-hoon realized with devastating clarity that he didn't want her to leave either. Later that afternoon, Ji-hoon found himself in the garden, ostensibly reviewing security placement with Min-jun. In reality, he was watching Naomi and Yuna through the window. They were doing physical therapy exercises, gentle movements set to music Naomi had chosen. Yuna was laughing, actually laughing, as Naomi exaggerated her stretches into silly dances. "You're staring again," Min-jun observed in Korean, his tone carefully neutral. "I'm observing. Is that what we're calling it?" Min-jun's lips twitched with barely suppressed amusement. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's forgotten how to look away." Ji-hoon shot him a warning glare, but Min-jun had known him too long to be intimidated. "The staff has noticed," Min-jun continued. "The way you ask about her schedule. How you time your movements through the house to coincide with hers. How your entire mood shifts based on Yuna's daily reports that Ms. Carter delivers. Your point. My point is you're getting attached. Both of you are. And attachment in our world is weakness. I know." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "You think I don't know that? I think you know it intellectually." Min-jun's voice softened. "But emotionally, you're already in too deep." Ji-hoon wanted to deny it, wanted to insist he was still in control, still maintaining appropriate distance, still treating Naomi as nothing more than an employee. But he'd stopped lying to himself 2 weeks ago. Somewhere between the late-night conversations and the way she challenged him without fear and the impossible gentleness she showed his daughter, Naomi had become essential. Not just to Yuna's recovery. To him. "She's good for Yuna," Ji-hoon said finally. "She's good for both of you." Min-jun paused. "But Ji-hoon, you need to be careful. If your enemies sense that she matters to you, no one will touch her." The words came out cold, absolute, lethal. "I'll make sure of it. That's what I'm afraid of." Min-jun's expression was grim. Because the more you protect her, the more obvious it becomes that she's important. And the more important she becomes, the bigger the target on her back. Ji-hoon finished the thought, his stomach churning with a familiar dread. The same dread he'd felt with Yuna's mother. The same helpless terror that came with loving someone in a world built on violence. Inside the house, Naomi caught Yuna as she stumbled during a spin, both of them collapsing into giggles. Ji-hoon's heart did something painful in his chest. "What do I do?" he asked quietly. A question he'd never asked anyone before. Min-jun was silent for a long moment. "Either protect your heart and push her away before it's too late," he said finally. "Or protect her with everything you have and pray it's enough." Both options felt impossible. Both options felt like losing. That evening, Ji-hoon knocked on Naomi's door. It was inappropriate, unprofessional. There were surveillance cameras in the hallway, and his staff would notice, and it would raise questions he didn't want to answer. But he needed to see her. Needed to talk to her. Needed. The door opened, and Naomi stood there in casual clothes, leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked surprised. "Ji-hoon, is everything okay? Is it Yuna?" "Yuna's fine. Sleeping peacefully." He paused, suddenly uncertain. Can I come in? Naomi hesitated, clearly aware of how this would look. Then she stepped back, opening the door wider. Of course. Her room was warm, lived in, personal in a way the rest of the estate wasn't. Books stacked on the nightstand. A small speaker playing soft jazz. Photos pinned to a corkboard. Friends, family, moments from a life before this one. Ji-hoon realized he knew almost nothing about her beyond her medical credentials and her effect on his daughter. What did you need? Naomi asked, closing the door but leaving it slightly ajar. Maintaining propriety even in private. I wanted to thank you, Ji-hoon said, for what you asked Yuna this morning. About staying. I didn't promise her forever. I know. But you didn't run either. You didn't panic when she got attached. He took a breath. Most people in your position would have put up walls. Maintained emotional distance. I'm not most people. No. Ji-hoon's voice was soft. You're not. Naomi crossed her arms, a defensive gesture he was learning to read. Ji-hoon, we should probably talk about boundaries. Yuna is getting very attached, and I'm concerned that when this assignment ends. What if it doesn't end? The words hung in the air between them. Naomi stared at him. What? What if? Ji-hoon struggled to find the right words. What if we made this permanent? Long-term care for Yuna. Better salary. Whatever you need. You're offering me a permanent position? I'm offering you a home. The honesty in his voice surprised even himself. For as long as you want it. Yuna needs you. And I. He stopped, the confession catching in his throat. I need you too. But saying it out loud felt like handing her a weapon. Like admitting a weakness his enemies could exploit. Naomi seemed to hear the unspoken words anyway. Ji-hoon, she said gently. This isn't about need. You don't need me. You need security and control and certainty. And I can't give you that. I'm temporary by nature. I work with families until the crisis passes, then I move on. That's always been my pattern. Why? Because staying means getting too attached. And getting attached means getting hurt when things inevitably fall apart. Ji-hoon recognized that philosophy. He'd lived by the same principle for years. What if things don't fall apart? He asked. They always do. Naomi's voice carried old pain. Trust me. I've learned that lesson. Atlanta. She nodded, not meeting his eyes. I stayed too long with that family. Got too close to that little boy. Started thinking of them as my family. And when he died, when I lost him, it destroyed me. Broke something I'm not sure I've fully repaired. Ji-hoon took a step closer. So you run now. Before it can hurt. I protect myself. There's a difference. Is there? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her hand. Because from where I'm standing, you're doing exactly what I've been doing for 3 years. Building walls. Keeping people at a distance. Telling yourself it's safer to be alone. Naomi's breath hitched. This is different. How? Because you're... She stopped, shaking her head. This conversation is inappropriate. I know. You're my employer. I know. And I'm here for Yuna, not for... Her voice faltered. Not for this. I know that too. Ji-hoon's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch gentle and devastating. But it doesn't change the fact that somewhere in the last month, you became more than Yuna's caretaker. More than an employee. Ji-hoon. You've become someone I rely on. Someone whose opinion matters. Someone who makes this house feel less like a prison and more like... He couldn't finish the sentence. Because the word he wanted to use was home. And home implied permanence. Implied safety. Implied a future that men like him didn't get to have. Naomi was looking at him with those impossibly expressive eyes, and Ji-hoon could see the war happening behind them. The same war happening inside him. Professional distance versus growing feelings. Safety versus risk. Running versus staying. I care about Yuna, Naomi said finally, her voice shaking slightly. And I care about you. More than I should. More than is smart. But Ji-hoon, your world is dangerous. Your life is complicated in ways I don't fully understand. And I'm not built for this kind of... A scream cut through the house. Yuna. They both ran, professional distance forgotten, parental terror overriding everything else. Yuna's room was chaos, the little girl sitting up in bed, sobbing hysterically, her monitors beeping urgent warnings. Baby, I'm here. Naomi was at her side instantly, checking vitals with practiced efficiency. What's wrong? Where does it hurt? I had a dream, Yuna gasped between sobs. You left. You packed your bags and left, and Appa said you weren't coming back, and I was all alone again. Shoo, I'm here. I'm right here. Naomi pulled her into a careful embrace. It was just a dream, sweetheart. But you will leave. Yuna clutched at Naomi desperately. Everyone leaves. Iyama left. The other nurses left. You'll leave too. Yuna, Ji-hoon tried, his voice rough with emotion. But Yuna just cried harder, her small body shaking with the force of her fear. And Ji-hoon stood there, watching his daughter fall apart, watching Naomi hold her together, and realized with devastating clarity. He couldn't lose Naomi. Not because Yuna needed her, but because he did. Somewhere between the late-night conversations and the quiet moments in hallways and the way she'd seen past his armor to the broken man underneath, he'd fallen for her. Completely. Irrevocably, dangerously, and in his world, that kind of love was a death sentence waiting to happen. The photograph arrived in an unmarked envelope, slipped under Ji-hoon's office door at 3 in the morning. No note, no demands, no threats, just a single image that made his blood run cold. Naomi and Yuna in the garden, laughing, completely unaware they were being watched. The angle was wrong. Shot from outside the estate walls with a telephoto lens, which meant someone had been surveilling his property, studying his routines, looking for weaknesses. And they'd found one. Ji-hoon stared at the photograph with hands that wanted to shake but wouldn't allow themselves the luxury. Because shaking meant fear, and fear meant his enemies had already won. How long? Ji-hoon's voice was deadly calm as he faced Min-jun in the surveillance room. His head of security looked like he hadn't slept. We detected the breach 4 hours ago. Single photographer, high-powered lens, positioned in the building across from the East Garden. He was gone before we could intercept. Show me. Min-jun pulled up the footage. A figure in dark clothes, moving with professional efficiency, setting up equipment, taking shots, then disappearing into the Seoul night. Professional, Min-jun said grimly. Military training, probably. Knew exactly where our blind spots were. Which means someone on the inside told them. Ji-hoon's voice was ice. Someone gave them our security layout. We're investigating. Investigate faster. Ji-hoon turned back to the photograph, his jaw tight. Who sent this? No prints. No DNA. Envelope was generic, available at any convenience store. Min-jun hesitated, but the timing suggests the Choi Syndicate. They've been probing our operations for weeks, looking for leverage. Ji-hoon's hands clenched into fists. The Choi Syndicate. His oldest rivals. The organization that had killed Yuna's mother 3 years ago as a warning. And now they were watching Naomi. Triple security on the estate, Ji-hoon ordered. No one enters or leaves without my personal authorization. Review every staff member's background again. And I want surveillance on known Choi operatives. If they so much as breathe in the direction of my family. Ji-hoon. Min-jun's voice was careful. Ms. Carter isn't family. She's an employee. If we escalate protection around her, if we treat her like she matters. She doesn't matter, Ji-hoon lied. But she's caring for my daughter. Which makes her a valuable asset that needs protection. Min-jun didn't look convinced. The Choi Syndicate doesn't target assets. They target leverage. And the fact that they're photographing Ms. Carter means they think she's leverage. The implication hung in the air. They'd been watching. They'd seen the way Ji-hoon looked at Naomi, the way his routines had changed around her, the way his carefully controlled world had started to orbit around a woman who was supposed to be invisible. And in the underworld, visibility meant vulnerability. "I'll handle it," Ji-hoon said. "How?" "By making sure they understand that touching her would be the last mistake they ever make." Naomi knew something was wrong the moment she saw the additional security. 3 new guards stationed outside Yuna's wing. Surveillance cameras installed in hallways that had been clear yesterday. Armed men doing perimeter checks every 20 minutes instead of every hour. The estate had gone from fortress to maximum security prison overnight. "What's going on?" she asked Min-jun when she found him coordinating security rotations. "Standard protocol updates," he said without meeting her eyes. "Don't lie to me." Naomi kept her voice calm but firm. "I've been here long enough to know what standard looks like. This is threat response." Min-jun's jaw tightened. "You should talk to Mr. Park." "I'm talking to you." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Min-jun sighed, pulling out his phone and showing her the photograph. Naomi's stomach dropped. "When was this taken?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. 2 days ago. We only discovered the breach last night." 2 days. Someone had been watching her play with Yuna in the garden, taking pictures, studying them like prey, and she'd had no idea. "Who sent it?" "We don't know for certain. But we have suspicions." Min-jun's expression was grim. "Ms. Carter, you need to understand something about the world Mr. Park operates in. Enemies don't just attack directly. They look for pressure points. For people who matter. And right now, you're being evaluated as a potential pressure point." The words made Naomi's skin crawl. "I'm just Yuna's caretaker." "Are you?" Min-jun's gaze was too knowing. "Because from where I'm standing, and from where our enemies are watching, you look like considerably more than that." Naomi wanted to deny it. Wanted to insist that her relationship with Ji-hoon was purely professional. But she'd be lying. They both knew it. "What do I need to do?" she asked instead. "Be careful. Stay inside the estate. Don't establish routines that can be predicted." And Min-jun hesitated. "Consider maintaining more distance from Mr. Park and his daughter. The closer you are to them, the bigger the target on your back." Distance. Professional boundaries. Emotional walls. Everything Naomi had been trying to maintain since the moment she'd arrived. Everything that had been crumbling for weeks. "I can't do that to Yuna," Naomi said quietly. "She's already terrified of people leaving. If I suddenly pull back, then she'll be sad. But she'll be alive." Min-jun's voice was gentle but absolute. "Ms. Carter, I've seen what happens when Park Ji-hoon's enemies identify someone he cares about. It doesn't end well. For anyone." The warning was clear. And terrifying. Ji-hoon found Naomi in the garden that evening, standing exactly where the photograph had been taken. She was alone, staring at the wall where the photographer must have positioned himself, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold despite the warm evening air. "You saw it," Ji-hoon said. "Not a question. Min-jun showed me." Naomi didn't turn around. "You should have told me yourself." "I was going to." "When? After they sent a second photo? After they escalated to actual threats?" She finally turned to face him, and her eyes were angry. "I deserve to know I was being watched. That I was putting myself at risk just by being here." "You're not at risk." "Don't." Naomi's voice was sharp. "Don't lie to me and don't patronize me. I've spent the last 3 hours learning exactly how much danger I'm in. How many enemies you have. How many people would love to hurt you by hurting the people around you." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "Which is why I've tripled security. Why I have men watching every entrance. Why? Why you've turned this place into a prison." Naomi gestured at the guards visible in the distance. "Ji-hoon, I can't live like this. Yuna can't live like this. Constantly looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next threat. This is temporary. Once I handle the Choi Syndicate." And then what? Another syndicate will rise up? Another enemy will test you? This is your life, Ji-hoon. This is what you do. And I was naive to think I could exist in your world without becoming a target. The words hit him like physical blows. Because she was right. His world was violent, dangerous, built on power dynamics that made collateral damage inevitable. And Naomi, kind, gentle Naomi who just wanted to heal children and make them laugh, had walked into the middle of a war zone without fully understanding what that meant. "I'll protect you," Ji-hoon said, his voice rough. "I swear to you, no one will touch you or Yuna." "You can't promise that." Naomi's eyes were sad. "You couldn't protect Yuna's mother. You told me yourself, they killed her to hurt you. What makes you think you can protect me?" The question shattered something inside him. "Because I won't make the same mistake twice." Ji-hoon closed the distance between them, his voice intense. "Because I've learned from every failure. Because I'm stronger now, smarter, more ruthless. Because..." He stopped, the confession catching in his throat. "Because I love you." But saying it would make it real. Would make her an even bigger target. Would paint a bullseye on her back that his enemies would exploit without mercy. "Because what?" Naomi asked softly, searching his face. Ji-hoon forced himself to step back. To rebuild the walls. To do what he should have done weeks ago. "Because you're important to Yuna's recovery," he said, his voice going cold and controlled. "And I protect my investments." The lie tasted like ash. Naomi flinched like he'd slapped her. "Right," she said quietly. "An investment. How could I forget?" "Naomi." "No, you're right. This is a job. A temporary position. I care for your daughter, you pay me, and when the contract ends, I leave. Simple. Professional. Exactly what it should be." But her voice cracked on the last word, betraying the hurt underneath. Ji-hoon wanted to take it back. Wanted to tell her the truth, that she'd become essential to him in ways that terrified him. That the thought of losing her made him feel as helpless as watching Yuna's heart fail. That he was falling for her despite every rational reason not to. But before he could speak, Min-jun appeared at the garden entrance, his expression urgent. "We have a problem," he said in Korean. "The Choi Syndicate just moved on one of our operations. They're sending a message." Ji-hoon's blood went cold. Casualties. 3 injured. No deaths. But Ji-hoon, Min-jun's eyes flicked to Naomi, then back. They left another photograph. Same woman. Different location. Different location. Which meant they'd been following Naomi beyond the estate. Tracking her movements. Studying her patterns. Building a profile. Planning something. "Show me," Ji-hoon ordered. As he turned to follow Min-jun, Naomi caught his arm. "What's happening?" Her voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. "Nothing you need to worry about." Ji-hoon gently removed her hand, the distance between them suddenly feeling like a chasm. "Stay inside. Don't leave the estate. And Naomi." He paused, wanting to say so many things. Wanting to apologize for the lie. For the danger. For pulling her into a world that would destroy her if given the chance. "Be careful," he said finally. Then he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the garden where enemies had photographed her like prey. Inside his office, Min-jun showed him the second photograph. Naomi at a cafe in downtown Seoul. 3 weeks ago, during her day off. She was smiling at someone across the table. A friend, probably. Completely relaxed. Completely vulnerable. Completely unaware she was being hunted. "They've been tracking her for weeks," Min-jun said grimly. "Long before we knew there was a threat. Which means they know exactly how important she is," Ji-hoon finished. "They've been watching me watch her. Studying my patterns. Calculating her value as leverage. What do you want to do?" Ji-hoon stared at the photograph, his mind racing through scenarios and strategies. He could send Naomi away. Back to Atlanta. Out of his world and out of danger. It would destroy Yuna. would break the fragile progress they'd made, would shatter something inside him he'd only just started to acknowledge. But it would keep her safe. Or he could keep her close. Protect her with everything he had. Turn his entire organization into her personal security force, which would confirm to his enemies that she mattered, that she was the perfect weapon to use against him. Both options felt like losing. Both options felt like choosing between his heart and his daughter's life. "Bring me everything we have on the Choi Syndicate's current operations," Ji-hoon said finally, his voice deadly calm. "Every location, every asset, every person they care about." "Ji-hoon, they want to play games with my family?" Ji-hoon's eyes were ice. "Then I'll show them exactly what happens when they mistake my restraint for weakness." Min-jun nodded slowly. "And Ms. Carter?" Ji-hoon looked at the photograph one more time. Naomi's smile, bright and unguarded and completely unaware of the danger circling her. "She stays," he said, "under maximum protection. And if anyone from the Choi Syndicate so much as looks at her the wrong way..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to, because Park Ji-hoon had just declared war. And in his world, war meant only one thing. Someone was going to bleed. Naomi realized she was living in a cage when they refused to let her leave for a coffee run. "I'm sorry, Ms. Carter," the guard said, his English polite but absolute. "Mr. Park's orders. No one leaves the estate without security clearance and armed escort." "It's a coffee shop 3 blocks away," Naomi said, keeping her voice calm despite the frustration building in her chest. "I'll be gone 20 minutes. I understand. But the protocols are clear. The protocols are suffocating." Naomi took a breath, trying to center herself. "Look, I appreciate the concern. But I need air. I need space. I need to feel like a human being and not a prisoner." The guard's expression didn't change. "Would you like me to call Mr. Park?" "No." Naomi turned away before she said something she'd regret. "I wouldn't." But as she walked back through the estate's marble hallways, past surveillance cameras and armed men and locked doors, she realized something that made her blood run cold. She couldn't leave even if she wanted to. Ji-hoon hadn't just increased security to protect her. He'd built a prison to keep her. And the worst part? She wasn't sure if he even realized the difference. She found him in his office 2 hours later, reviewing security footage on multiple monitors. "We need to talk," Naomi said from the doorway. Ji-hoon looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Is Yuna?" "Yuna is fine. Napping peacefully." Naomi stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "This is about me. About the new security measures. About the fact that I can't leave this estate without permission like I'm a child or a criminal." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "It's for your safety. It's for your control." Naomi crossed her arms. "There's a difference, Ji-hoon. The Choi Syndicate has eyes on you." "I know. I saw the photographs. I understand the threat." Naomi kept her voice level. "But the solution isn't to lock me up. It's to let me make informed decisions about my own safety." "You don't understand the level of danger." "Then explain it to me." Naomi took a step closer. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile or stupid or incapable of understanding risk. I'm an adult, a professional, and I deserve to have a say in how my life is managed." Ji-hoon stood, his hands braced on the desk. "This isn't about management. This is about keeping you alive." "By taking away my freedom?" Naomi's voice rose slightly. "By making every decision for me? By surrounding me with armed guards like I'm a possession to be protected rather than a person with agency?" "You're not a possession. Then stop treating me like one." The words hung in the air between them. Ji-hoon's expression was unreadable, but Naomi could see the war happening behind his eyes. Control versus trust. Fear versus respect. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his voice raw. "Do you understand? I can't watch another person He stopped, the confession catching. "I can't lose anyone else." The vulnerability in those words made Naomi's anger falter. Because she understood. She'd seen the surveillance photos. She knew what had happened to Yuna's mother. She could imagine the trauma of loving someone in a world where love made you a target. But understanding didn't mean accepting. Ji-hoon, she said softly. I know you're scared. I know you're trying to protect me. But there's a difference between protection and possession. Protection means giving me the tools and information to keep myself safe. Possession means locking me in a cage and calling it love. I never said I loved you. The denial felt like a slap. Naomi forced herself to keep her voice steady. You're right. You didn't. So let's call this what it is. You protecting an asset. A valuable employee who's useful to your daughter's recovery. That's not. Then what is it? Naomi challenged. Because from where I'm standing, you're using security as an excuse to control my movements. To dictate when I can leave, where I can go, who I can see. And that's not protection. That's ownership. Ji-hoon's hands clenched into fists. You don't understand my world. Then help me understand. Naomi's frustration spilled over. Stop shutting me out and making decisions for me and assuming I can't handle the truth. I've worked in hospitals, Ji-hoon. I've seen violence. I've treated gunshot victims and abuse survivors. I'm not some delicate flower who needs to be sheltered from reality. This is different. How? How is it different? Because the people hunting you aren't random criminals. Ji-hoon's control finally cracked. They're professionals. Trained killers who study their targets and exploit weaknesses. They killed Yuna's mother by making it look like an accident. They burned down a rival's entire family while they slept. They don't just hurt people, they make examples. The fear in his voice was palpable, real, terrifying. And you think locking me up will stop them? Naomi asked quietly. I think it's the only thing I can control. Ji-hoon's voice was barely above a whisper. I can't control their movements. Can't predict their next attack. Can't guarantee your safety if you're out there, exposed, vulnerable. But I can control this estate. Can monitor every entrance. Can ensure that while you're here, you're protected. While I'm here, I'm trapped. While you're here, you're alive. They stared at each other, the gulf between their perspectives feeling impossibly wide. Naomi understood his fear. Truly, she did. But she also understood what it felt like to be treated like property instead of a partner. I can't live like this, she said finally. I can't exist in a cage, no matter how gilded. No matter how well-intentioned. What are you saying? I'm saying that if these restrictions continue, if I'm not allowed basic freedoms like leaving the estate or making my own decisions, I'll have to resign. The words fell like bombs. Ji-hoon's face went pale. You're threatening to leave? I'm setting a boundary. Naomi's voice was firm despite the way her heart was racing. I care about Yuna. I care about... She stopped, not ready to finish that sentence. I want to stay. But not as a prisoner. Not as someone whose entire life is dictated by your fear. My fear is justified. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying it can't become my cage. Naomi took a breath. Ji-hoon, I need you to hear me. Really hear me. I'm willing to work with you. To take reasonable precautions. To coordinate with security when I need to leave. But I won't surrender my autonomy. I won't become someone who needs permission to live her life. Even if it keeps you safe? Even then. Naomi's eyes held his. Because safety without freedom isn't life. It's just a different kind of death. The silence that followed was absolute. Ji-hoon looked like she'd just told him the sun wouldn't rise tomorrow. Like every assumption he'd built his world on had just shattered. You don't understand what you're asking, he said finally. Yes, I do. I'm asking you to trust me. To see me as an equal partner capable of making informed decisions about my own safety. To stop trying to control everything and accept that some things, some people, can't be controlled. And if I can't do that? Naomi's heart broke a little. Then I'll pack my bags tonight. The threat hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Ji-hoon looked at her with something that might have been desperation or anger or both. Yuna needs you. Yuna needs a lot of things. She doesn't need to learn that love means giving up who you are for someone else's peace of mind. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Naomi's voice was gentle but unflinching. Ji-hoon, you're teaching your daughter how relationships work, how men treat women they care about. And right now, you're showing her that protection justifies control, that safety requires submission. Is that really the lesson you want her to learn? The question hit its mark. Ji-hoon's expression crumbled for just a moment before he rebuilt his walls. I'm doing what I think is right. I know, but your right is suffocating me. Then what do you want from me? The frustration in his voice was raw. You want me to just let you walk into danger? To pretend the threats don't exist? I want you to talk to me. Naomi stepped closer, her own frustration matching his. I want you to share information instead of making unilateral decisions. I want you to ask what I'm comfortable with instead of assuming you know better. I want you to treat me like a partner, not a possession. I've never had a partner. Ji-hoon's honesty was devastating. I've had employees, enemies, allies, people I protect and people who obey. But a partner? Someone who stands beside me instead of behind me? I don't know how to do that. The vulnerability in that confession made Naomi's anger soften. Then learn, she said quietly. Learn with me. We can figure this out together. But Ji-hoon, I can't do that if you won't let me in. If you won't trust me with the truth and give me space to make my own choices. Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then, slowly, he moved around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. If I loosen security, he said, his voice carefully controlled, if I give you more freedom, you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll be careful. That you'll check in. That you'll let me assign one guard, just one, for when you leave the estate. Not to control you, to protect you. It was a compromise. A small one. But it was movement. Progress. Trust. Okay, Naomi said. One guard. But I choose when I leave and where I go. Within reason. Define reason. No dark alleys. No known Choi territory. Check-ins every hour when you're off the estate. Naomi considered. Every 2 hours. Every 90 minutes. Deal. They stood there, close enough that Naomi could see the exhaustion in Ji-hoon's eyes, the fear he was working so hard to control, the desperate need to keep her safe battling against his growing understanding that safety and freedom weren't mutually exclusive. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. Every moment you're not within these walls, I'm terrified. I know. Naomi's hand found his, fingers intertwining. But Ji-hoon, you can't let fear dictate every decision. Sometimes you have to trust that the people you care about are strong enough to protect themselves. Smart enough to recognize danger. Capable enough to survive. And if I'm wrong, if something happens to you, then you'll deal with it. The same way you've dealt with every other loss. But at least I'll have lived on my own terms. Ji-hoon's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch achingly gentle. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said. Or the most foolish. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Yes, you definitely can be. The moment stretched between them, charged with everything they weren't saying. Then Naomi's phone buzzed, a reminder about Yuna's afternoon medication. Reality intruding on their fragile truce. I should go, Naomi said, but she didn't move. Yes, Ji-hoon agreed. But his hand tightened on hers. Ji-hoon. I'm trying, he said quietly. To be better. To trust. To see you as a partner. But you need to understand that everything in my life has taught me that caring about people makes them targets. That love is weakness. That the only way to protect what matters is to control every variable. And you need to understand that I won't be controlled. Not by you. Not by fear. Not by anyone. I'm beginning to realize that. Good. Naomi squeezed his hand once, then gently pulled away. Because Ji-hoon, I'm staying. For now. For Yuna. For... She stopped herself. But if you ever lock me up again, if you ever try to take away my freedom in the name of protection, I will leave. And I won't look back. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And Ji-hoon, who'd built his empire on reading people, knew the difference. Understood, he said. Naomi nodded and turned to leave. Naomi. She paused at the door, looking back. Ji-hoon stood in the middle of his office, surrounded by surveillance monitors and security feeds, looking more alone than anyone should ever look. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on us yet. The us in that sentence held worlds of meaning. Naomi's heart did something complicated in her chest. Don't make me regret it, she said softly. Then she left, closing the door behind her. In the hallway, Naomi leaned against the wall and took a shaky breath. She'd just threatened to leave the most dangerous man in Seoul. Had set boundaries with someone who wasn't used to being told no. Had demanded freedom in a world built on control. And somehow, impossibly, he'd listened. He'd compromised. He'd bent without breaking. It was progress. Fragile, tentative progress. But as Naomi walked toward Yuna's room, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was still coming. Because Ji-hoon had agreed to give her freedom. But the question remained, when his enemies made their next move, and they would make a move, would his promises hold? Or would his fear turn those promises to ash? Park Ji-hoon made his fatal mistake on a Tuesday evening, in front of 17 witnesses, at exactly 7:43 p.m. The mistake wasn't business-related, wasn't strategic, wasn't the kind of calculated error that could be managed with money or violence or carefully worded threats. The mistake was simple, devastating, and utterly human. He let Naomi see how much he loved her. And everyone else saw it too. The evening had started innocuously enough. Ji-hoon was hosting a dinner, a carefully orchestrated show of power disguised as hospitality. Representatives from allied organizations. Business partners who operated in the gray spaces between legal and criminal. People who needed to see that Park Ji-hoon was still in control, still untouchable, still the king of Seoul's underworld. Naomi wasn't supposed to be there. She was upstairs with Yuna, helping the little girl with her evening routine, completely separate from the dangerous world unfolding in the dining room below. That was the plan. That was the boundary they'd maintained for weeks. But then Yuna had a spell. Her heart monitor alarming, her breathing becoming labored, and Naomi had to bring her downstairs to the medical equipment Ji-hoon kept on the first floor for emergencies. She came down the main staircase carrying Yuna, her face focused and professional, completely unaware she was walking into a room full of predators. Ji-hoon saw her the moment she appeared, and everything else in the room ceased to exist. He was in the middle of a conversation with Kim Dae-young, the head of a shipping conglomerate that laundered money through legitimate ports. Important discussion. Critical alliance. But when Naomi descended those stairs with his daughter in her arms, Ji-hoon's entire world narrowed to a single point. "Excuse me," he said, cutting off Kim mid-sentence. He was moving before conscious thought caught up. Crossing the room with urgent strides. Every eye in the dining room tracking his movement. What happened? His voice came out rougher than intended. Naomi looked surprised to see him, and surprised by the roomful of dangerous men now watching her with calculating interest. "She's okay," Naomi said quickly, her voice calm despite the tension. "Just a minor arrhythmia. Nothing serious. But I need to get her to the medical room and check her vitals properly." "I'll take her." Ji-hoon reached for Yuna, but his daughter clung to Naomi. "Naomi can do it, Appa," Yuna said, her voice tired. "She knows what to do." Ji-hoon hesitated, his eyes meeting Naomi's over his daughter's head. And that's when he made his first mistake. He touched her. Just his hand on her arm, a gentle, reassuring gesture meant to convey trust and gratitude and something deeper he didn't have words for. But in a room full of people trained to read weakness, that single touch spoke volumes. "Go," he said softly, his voice meant only for her. I'll be up in 10 minutes. Naomi nodded and carried Yuna toward the medical room, her movements efficient and professional. But the damage was already done. Ji-hoon turned back to his guests, rebuilding his mask, preparing to smooth over the interruption with casual explanations about his daughter's ongoing care. But the way they were looking at him had changed. Calculating, assessing, storing information for later use. They'd seen something they weren't supposed to see. And Ji-hoon knew, with sickening certainty, that he'd just painted a target on Naomi's back in high-definition color. He tried to salvage the evening. Returned to conversations. Discussed business. Projected control and confidence and the cold authority his reputation was built on. But his mind was upstairs. With Yuna. With Naomi. And everyone knew it. Kim Dae-young leaned in during dessert, his voice low and conspiratorial. Your daughter's caretaker seems very competent. It wasn't a compliment. It was a probe. She's the best, Ji-hoon said neutrally. American, isn't she? Unusual choice. Credentials matter more than nationality. Of course, of course. Kim's smile didn't reach his eyes. Though I imagine having someone so attractive caring for your child must present certain complications. The insinuation made Ji-hoon's blood run cold. Ms. Carter is a professional, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. And anyone who suggests otherwise will find themselves answering to me personally. The threat was clear. Absolute. The kind of warning Ji-hoon had built his reputation on. But Kim just smiled wider, like Ji-hoon had confirmed exactly what he'd suspected. Of course, of course. No disrespect intended. But the look in Kim's eyes said he'd found exactly what he was looking for. Leverage. The dinner ended at 10. Ji-hoon saw his guests out with perfect courtesy, perfect control, perfect performance of the role he'd played for years. But the moment the last car left his gates, he practically ran upstairs. He found Naomi in the medical room, updating Yuna's charts. His daughter was sleeping peacefully in the recovery bed, her monitors showing stable vitals. She's okay? Ji-hoon asked, slightly breathless. Naomi looked up, surprised by his urgency. Yes. Just a minor episode. Her medication needed adjusting. I already contacted Dr. Kim and got approval for the new dosage. Relief flooded through him so intensely it almost brought him to his knees. Thank you, he said. It's my job. It's more than that. The words came out before he could stop them. You're more than that. Naomi's hands stilled on the chart. Ji-hoon. I know we agreed to boundaries, to professionalism, to keeping things. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and fear and something deeper breaking through his control. But I can't pretend anymore, Naomi. I can't keep acting like you're just an employee. Like you don't matter. Like I don't. Naomi stood, putting the desk between them like a barrier. Don't say something you can't take back. Why? Because it makes things complicated? They're already complicated. They were complicated the moment you walked into my life and made me feel things I'd buried for 3 years. Ji-hoon, your guests are barely gone. Your daughter is 10 feet away. This is not the time. There's never going to be a right time. His voice was too loud, too raw. He forced himself to lower it. Every day I tell myself I'll wait. I'll maintain distance. I'll keep this professional. And every day I fail a little more. Naomi was shaking her head, but Ji-hoon saw the conflict in her eyes. She felt it too. This impossible, dangerous, utterly inappropriate thing growing between them. Do you know what they saw tonight? Ji-hoon asked quietly. Downstairs, when you came down with Yuna? I don't. They saw me care. They saw me drop everything and cross a room full of important allies because you were there and you mattered more. He took a step closer. They saw weakness, Naomi. And in my world, weakness is blood in the water. Then we need to be more careful. I can't be more careful. The confession burst out of him. I can't watch you with my daughter and not feel grateful. Can't hear your voice and not feel calm. Can't see you in danger and not feel terrified. Can't imagine you leaving and not feel like I'm drowning. Naomi's breath caught. Ji-hoon. I'm falling for you. The words were simple, devastating. True. I've been falling for you since the moment you challenged me in my office and refused to be afraid. Since you held my daughter and made her laugh again. Since you saw past the monster everyone else sees and found something worth. He stopped, the vulnerability too much. Naomi was staring at him with wide eyes, her professional composure completely shattered. You can't love me, she whispered. It's too dangerous. For both of us. I know. Your enemies will use me against you. I know. Yuna could get hurt if this goes wrong. I know. Ji-hoon closed the distance between them, slowly, giving her every chance to move away. I know all of that. I know loving you is the most strategically foolish decision I could possibly make. That it puts everyone at risk. That it makes me vulnerable in ways I swore I'd never be again. He stopped just in front of her, close enough to see the conflict warring in her eyes. But Naomi, I can't stop. I've tried. God knows I've tried. But every time you smile at my daughter, every time you challenge me to be better, every time you look at me like I'm a man instead of a monster, I fall a little harder. This can't work, Naomi said, but her voice was shaking. We're from different worlds. You're a crime lord, Ji-hoon. And I'm just. You're not just anything. Ji-hoon reached up slowly, carefully, and touched her face. You're the bravest person I've ever met. The kindest. The one who makes me want to be someone worthy of. He couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words that would make this irrevocable. But Naomi heard them anyway. Ji-hoon, she whispered, her hand coming up to cover his where it rested against her cheek. I'm scared. So am I. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes. Everything already changed. His thumb traced across her cheekbone. The moment you walked into my life. The moment you made me feel alive again instead of just surviving. They stood there, frozen in that moment, both terrified and desperate and utterly unable to look away. Then Naomi made a choice. She leaned in. And Ji-hoon met her halfway. The kiss was soft. Careful. Like they were both afraid the other might shatter. But it was also inevitable. Like gravity. Like breathing. Like coming home after years of being lost. When they finally pulled apart, Ji-hoon rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, savoring the moment before reality crashed back in. I love you, he whispered, finally saying the words he'd been holding back for weeks. I love you, and it terrifies me, and I have no idea how to protect you from my world, but... A flash of light from outside the window made them both freeze. Ji-hoon's eyes snapped open, his body going rigid with recognition. Camera flash. Someone had been watching. Someone had photographed them through the window. And in that single captured moment, Ji-hoon touching Naomi's face with devastating gentleness, their foreheads pressed together, their bodies speaking volumes about intimacy and trust and love. Park Ji-hoon's greatest weakness had been documented. Confirmed. Weaponized. He pulled away from Naomi, moving to the window, but the photographer was already gone. Just empty gardens and shadows and the sickening certainty that everything was about to fall apart. Ji-hoon. Naomi's voice was small, scared. What was that? He turned to look at her, this woman he loved, this woman he just condemned to danger with his confession, and felt something inside him break. That, he said quietly, was the sound of my enemies finding exactly what they needed to destroy me. And the worst part? He'd given it to them willingly. All because for one perfect, impossible moment, he'd forgotten that men like him didn't get to fall in love. They only got to watch the people they loved become casualties of war. The attack came at 3:47 a.m., when the world was at its quietest and defenses were at their weakest. Naomi woke to the sound of gunfire. Not on television. Not in the distance. Right here. Inside the estate. inside the fortress that was supposed to be impenetrable. She was moving before conscious thought caught up, muscle memory from hospital emergency drills taking over. Out of bed, grabbing her phone, running toward Yuna's room. The hallway was chaos. Armed guards rushing past, shouting in Korean. The sharp crack of weapons firing. Smoke alarms screaming. Emergency lights strobing red across marble floors. And through it all, one thought consumed her. Yuna. She burst into the little girl's room to find it empty. Bed unmade, blankets thrown aside, the medical monitor still beeping its readings to no one. Terror unlike anything Naomi had ever felt seized her chest. "Why Yuna?" she screamed. A hand grabbed her arm. She spun, ready to fight, and found Minjun. "Safe room," he said in urgent English. Ji-hoon took her to the safe room. "Come." An explosion rocked the house. Not close, but close enough that Naomi felt it in her bones. Minjun's grip tightened. "Now, Ms. Carter. Move now." They ran. The safe room was in the basement. Reinforced steel, biometric locks, enough supplies to survive a siege. Ji-hoon had shown it to Naomi weeks ago. During the security briefing she'd barely paid attention to because she'd never thought she'd actually need it. Now, as Minjun pulled her through smoke-filled hallways and past bodies, she couldn't let herself look at too closely. Naomi understood exactly why this room existed. This was Ji-hoon's world. This was the violence she'd known existed intellectually but had never fully comprehended. This was what loving a man like Park Ji-hoon meant. Minjun entered a code. Pressed his palm to a scanner. The massive door swung open, revealing a space the size of a large bedroom, dimly lit and packed with surveillance equipment. And there, in the corner, wrapped in a blanket with her heart monitor still attached, was Yuna. "Naomi!" The little girl's face lit up with relief. Naomi was across the room in seconds, pulling Yuna into her arms, checking her over with shaking hands. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm scared," Yuna whispered. "There were loud noises and Appa grabbed me and we ran and—" "Shoo, baby. I've got you. You're safe now." But even as Naomi said the words, she looked around the safe room and realized something that made her blood run cold. Ji-hoon wasn't here. "Where is he?" Naomi demanded, looking at Minjun. "Where's Ji-hoon?" Minjun's expression was grim. "Fighting." Through the surveillance monitors lining the safe room walls, Naomi watched Park Ji-hoon become the monster everyone said he was. 6 men had breached the estate. Professional mercenaries, heavily armed, moving with military precision. They'd cut power to sections of the house. Neutralized exterior guards. Created diversions to split Ji-hoon's security forces. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd threatened his daughter. Naomi watched on grainy black and white footage as Ji-hoon moved through his own house like a predator. No hesitation. No mercy. Every movement precise and brutal and terrifyingly efficient. He'd armed himself. She could see the weapon in his hand, but he didn't rely on it entirely. When one attacker rounded a corner, Ji-hoon disarmed him with 3 moves that looked almost choreographed in their violence. The attacker went down. Didn't get up. "Turn it off," Naomi said, her voice shaking. "Yuna doesn't need to see." "She's asleep," Minjun said quietly. The fear exhausted her. "And Ms. Carter, you should watch. You should see what he is. What he's capable of." "I know what he's capable of." "Do you?" Minjun's eyes were hard. "Because this is what loving Park Ji-hoon means. This violence. This blood. This is the world you're stepping into if you stay." Naomi wanted to look away. Wanted to cover her eyes like a child hiding from a horror movie. But she forced herself to watch. To witness the reality of the man she'd fallen in love with. Ji-hoon cornered 2 attackers in the main hallway. They fired at him. He moved with impossible speed, using the architecture as cover, returning fire with cold precision. One attacker fell immediately. The second tried to run. Ji-hoon didn't let him. The brutality of it should have horrified her. Should have made her grab Yuna and run as far from this world as possible. But all Naomi could think was, "He's protecting us. Every violent action, every brutal choice, every terrifying display of skill. It was all to keep Yuna safe. To keep her safe. And that realization was somehow more terrifying than the violence itself. The attack lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 5 attackers were dead. 1 was captured, bleeding and unconscious in Ji-hoon's entry hall. 3 of Ji-hoon's guards were injured. 1 was dead. And Park Ji-hoon stood in the center of his home, shirt torn, blood on his hands that might or might not be his own, looking like something out of a nightmare. The safe room door opened. Ji-hoon stood there, and for a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. Then he saw Yuna asleep in Naomi's arms, and something in his expression shattered. "Is she?" "She's fine," Naomi said quickly. "Not hurt. Just scared and exhausted." Ji-hoon crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside them, his bloodied hands hovering over his daughter like he was afraid to touch her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, little one. I should have." "You saved her," Naomi interrupted. "Ji-hoon, you got her to safety. You protected her. I put her in danger by existing." His voice was raw. "By being who I am. By—" His eyes met Naomi's, and she saw the guilt there. The self-hatred. "By loving people I have no right to love." The words hung in the air. Minjun cleared his throat. "I'll give you privacy. The house is secure now. Medical team is on site for the injured." He paused at the door. "Ji-hoona, the survivor is ready for questioning whenever you are." Ji-hoon nodded without looking away from his daughter. The door closed, leaving the 3 of them alone in the reinforced silence of the safe room. Naomi shifted carefully, trying not to wake Yuna. "We should get her upstairs. Back to her own bed. I'll carry her." Ji-hoon's voice was hollow. "You shouldn't have to. Ji-hoon." Naomi waited until he looked at her. "I'm not going anywhere. You understand that? I'm not running. I'm not leaving. Whatever you think you need to do to push me away, don't. You saw what I did. It wasn't a question. I saw you protect your family. I killed people, Naomi. In my own home. With my bare hands. That's who I am. That's what I do. I know." Naomi's voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "And I'm not going to pretend it doesn't scare me. That this," she gestured around the safe room, at the monitors still showing the aftermath of violence, "doesn't terrify me. But Ji-hoon, I see you. All of you. The monster and the man. The killer and the father. And I'm choosing to stay." "Why?" The question was desperate. "Why would you choose this? Choose me?" "Because—" Naomi stopped, the words catching in her throat. "Because she loved him. Because despite everything, the danger, the violence, the impossibility of it all, she'd fallen completely for this broken, dangerous, impossibly gentle man." But before she could say it, Yuna stirred in her arms. "Appa!" The little girl's eyes opened, unfocused and tired. "Are the bad people gone?" "Yes, little one." Ji-hoon's voice transformed instantly, all the violence and guilt hidden behind careful gentleness. "They're gone. You're safe now." "Naomi stayed?" "I'm right here, baby girl," Naomi said softly. Yuna smiled sleepily. "Good. I knew you would. You always stay." The innocence in those words nearly broke both adults. "Let's get you back to bed," Ji-hoon said, carefully lifting his daughter from Naomi's arms. "Proper bed. Your room. Everything will look better in the morning." But as they left the safe room and climbed the stairs, past bloodstains and bullet holes and the physical evidence of violence, Naomi knew nothing would look better in the morning. Because the attack had proven what they'd both been trying to deny. Loving Ji-hoon meant living with constant danger. It meant accepting that violence could shatter their peace at any moment. It meant understanding that the price of this love might ultimately be paid in blood. After Yuna was settled, monitors recalibrated, medications adjusted, guards posted outside her door, Ji-hoon walked Naomi to her room. They stood in her doorway, neither ready to say goodnight, both acutely aware of how close they'd come to losing everything. The photograph, Naomi said quietly. The one from last night. This attack. Is it connected? Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. The Choi Syndicate sent the attackers. We confirmed it from the survivors' tattoos before he stopped. Before interrogation. They saw us together. They knew you cared about me. So they attacked. Yes. And they'll attack again. Yes. Ji-hoon's voice was hollow. As long as you matter to me, you're a target. As long as I love you. Don't. Naomi reached out, touching his face carefully, mindful of the cuts and bruises already forming. Don't you dare finish that sentence by saying you need to push me away. Naomi. I meant what I said in the safe room. I'm not leaving. I'm not running. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Even knowing the cost. The cost might be your life. Then we make sure that doesn't happen. Naomi's voice was firm. We're smart. We're careful. We work together instead of you trying to protect me by shutting me out. Ji-hoon looked at her with something that might have been wonder or despair or both. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, he said softly, or the most foolish. We've had this conversation before. And my answer hasn't changed. You're both. A ghost of a smile touched Naomi's lips. Then it faded. What happens now? She asked. Now. Ji-hoon's expression went cold. Empty. The mask he wore when making decisions that required shutting off his humanity. Now I remind the Choi Syndicate why people fear the name Park Ji-hoon. I find everyone involved in planning this attack. And I make sure they understand that threatening my family was the last mistake they'll ever make. The violence in his voice should have scared her. Instead, Naomi found herself thinking, this is who he is. This is the price of his protection. And somehow, impossibly, she could accept it. Be careful, she whispered. I'm always careful. No. You're always controlled. There's a difference. Naomi's hand slid down to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Too fast, adrenaline still coursing through him. Don't let revenge make you reckless. Don't let anger make you careless. Yuna needs you. I need you. Come back. Ji-hoon covered her hand with his, pressing it against his heart. I will, he promised. Then he leaned in and kissed her, desperate and gentle and tasting like blood and violence and impossible love. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark with promises Naomi knew he'd keep. Lock your door, he said. Don't open it for anyone but me or Minjun. Where are you going? Ji-hoon's smile was cold and terrible. To have a conversation with the people who thought they could threaten what's mine. And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of his broken fortress. Leaving Naomi standing in her doorway, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her heart racing with fear and love and the terrible understanding that everything had changed. The Choi Syndicate had drawn first blood. But Park Ji-hoon was about to teach them what happened when you made an enemy of a man with nothing left to lose. Except everything. Park Ji-hoon had made many difficult decisions in his life. He'd ordered executions, destroyed families, sacrificed innocent people for the greater strategic good. But nothing, had ever been as hard as what he was about to do. He was going to break Naomi Carter's heart. Intentionally, cruelly, completely. And it was going to destroy him in the process. It had been 3 days since the attack. 3 days of Ji-hoon dismantling the Choi Syndicate with surgical precision. Their operations shut down. Their assets frozen. Their leadership disappearing one by one into the shadows they'd emerged from. He'd been efficient, brutal, everything his reputation promised. But while he'd been handling external threats, Minjun had uncovered something worse. A second threat. Internal this time. Someone inside Ji-hoon's organization had been feeding information to the Choi Syndicate. Someone close enough to know Naomi mattered. Close enough to know when she'd be vulnerable. Close enough to try again. And this time, Minjun's intelligence suggested, they wouldn't just attack the estate. They'd target Naomi directly. Away from Ji-hoon's protection. In a way he couldn't stop. The message was clear. As long as Naomi stayed in Ji-hoon's life, she was a walking target, which left him with only one option. The one he'd been dreading since the moment he'd fallen for her. He found Naomi in the garden with Yuna, both of them working on an art project. Painting rocks, of all things. Normal. Peaceful. Exactly the kind of scene that never existed in Ji-hoon's world. Exactly what he was about to destroy. "Naomi," he said, his voice carefully empty. "I need to speak with you. Privately." She looked up, immediately reading the tension in his posture. "Is everything okay?" "Office. Now." The coldness in his tone made her flinch. Good. He needed her off balance for this to work. "Yuna, baby, I'll be right back," Naomi said, standing. "Keep painting, okay?" "Okay, Naomi." Yuna, blessedly oblivious, returned to her rocks. Naomi followed Ji-hoon inside, her concern growing with every step. When they reached his office, he closed the door and locked it. Then he turned to face her and became the monster she'd always refused to see. "We need to discuss your employment," Ji-hoon said, moving behind his desk, putting physical and emotional distance between them. Naomi's brow furrowed. "My employment? Ji-hoon, what's going on?" "The attack 3 days ago made it clear that your presence here is no longer tenable. I'm terminating your contract, effective immediately." The words landed like bombs. Naomi stared at him. "You're firing me?" "Yes. Because of the attack. Because I was in danger." Her voice rose. "That wasn't my fault." "No, it was mine." Ji-hoon kept his expression cold, controlled. "I made a strategic error in allowing our relationship to become too familiar, too visible. It created a vulnerability my enemies exploited." "Our relationship?" Naomi's eyes widened. "Ji-hoon, 3 days ago you told me you loved me. You kissed me. That was a mistake." Each word felt like swallowing glass, but he forced them out. A moment of weakness brought on by adrenaline and fear. It shouldn't have happened. He watched her face crumple, watched hurt and confusion war with disbelief. And he hated himself more than he'd ever hated anyone. "You don't mean that," Naomi said, her voice shaking. "I know you don't." "Ji-hoon, look at me." "I'm looking at you, Ms. Carter. And I'm telling you that your services are no longer required. I've arranged for a replacement caretaker to arrive tomorrow. She comes highly recommended and, more importantly, she won't inspire the kind of complications you have." "Complications?" Naomi's voice went flat. "Dangerous. Is that what you're calling what we have? Complications?" "What we had was a professional relationship that became inappropriately personal. I take full responsibility for that lapse in judgment." "Lapse in judgment." She was repeating his words now, testing them, trying to find the lie underneath. "So everything you said to me, every conversation we had, every moment we shared, that was all a lapse in judgment?" "Yes." The single word hung in the air like an execution. Naomi took a step back, and Ji-hoon could see the exact moment her heart broke. Could see the trust shatter. Could see the woman who'd challenged him without fear finally learn to be afraid. Not of his violence, but of his lies. "I don't believe you," Naomi said, but her voice wavered. "That's your prerogative. But the decision is final. What about Yuna?" Now her voice was desperate, grasping for the one argument that might change his mind. "She needs me. She's finally stable, finally improving. Yuna will be fine. Children are resilient. She'll adjust to the new caretaker. She'll be devastated. She'll survive." Ji-hoon forced himself to stay cold, emotionless. "Ms. Carter, you're being paid through the end of the month. I've also included a substantial severance package as compensation for the difficult circumstances. Min-jun will provide you with travel arrangements back to Atlanta." "I don't want your money." "Nevertheless, you'll take it. Consider it payment for your discretion about what you've seen here." The implication was clear. He was buying her silence, reducing everything they'd shared to a transaction. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back furiously. "I want to hear you say it," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "Look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me. That everything was a lie. That I meant nothing." This was the moment. The killing blow. Ji-hoon met her eyes, those beautiful, expressive eyes that had seen past every wall he'd built, and lied with every ounce of control he possessed. "I don't love you, Naomi. You were a convenience. Someone to care for my daughter while I focused on business. And yes, you were attractive, and I was lonely, and I let things go too far. But love." He let cold amusement touch his voice. "I'm not capable of that anymore. I thought you understood that." He watched her absorb the words. Watched them cut deep. Watched the woman who'd been brave enough to challenge a monster finally accept that maybe, just maybe, everyone else had been right about him all along. "You're lying," she whispered. But the certainty was gone from her voice. "I'm being honest for the first time since you arrived. Everything else was the lie." "No." Naomi shook her head. "No, I know you. I've seen who you are when no one's watching. I've seen you with Yuna. You've seen what I wanted you to see." Ji-hoon stood, moving to the window so he wouldn't have to watch her face anymore. "I'm very good at manipulation, Ms. Carter. It's how I've survived this long. And you, intelligent as you are, were remarkably easy to manipulate." The cruelty of it made him sick. But it was working. He could hear it in the silence, in the way her breathing had changed, in the small, wounded sound she made before catching herself. "I need you to leave now," Ji-hoon said, still not looking at her. "Pack your things. Say goodbye to Yuna. Keep it brief and professional. You'll be gone by morning." Just like that. Naomi's voice was hollow. "After everything? Just like that? And if I refuse? If I fight this?" Now Ji-hoon did turn, and he let her see the cold, empty place inside him where warmth used to live. "Then I'll have security escort you out. And I'll make sure you never work in pediatric care again. I have connections in every major hospital in Seoul and several in the States. One phone call, Ms. Carter, and your career is over." It was a bluff. He'd never actually sabotage her career. But she didn't know that. And the threat landed exactly as he'd intended. "You bastard," Naomi whispered. "Yes," Ji-hoon agreed. "I am. I thought you'd realized that by now." Naomi stood there for another moment, and Ji-hoon could see her trying to find some foothold. Some argument. Some way to fight back against the wall he'd just built between them. But there was nothing. He'd thought of everything. Anticipated every counterargument. Made himself so thoroughly reprehensible that staying would be impossible. "I'll need an hour," Naomi said finally, her voice dead. "To pack. To say goodbye properly to Yuna. You have 2 hours. Then I want you gone." She nodded once, mechanically, and turned toward the door. "Naomi," Ji-hoon said, unable to stop himself. She paused, not looking back. He wanted to take it all back. Wanted to tell her the truth, that he was lying to save her life, that pushing her away was killing him, that he loved her more than he'd thought possible to love anyone. But instead he said, "Thank you for your service to my daughter. You did your job well." Job. Service. Reducing months of connection and laughter and love to a business transaction. Naomi's shoulders stiffened. Then she walked out without another word. And Ji-hoon stood alone in his office, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway, knowing he'd just destroyed the best thing that had happened to him in years. All to keep her alive. Min-jun found him an hour later, still standing at the window, staring at nothing. "It's done," Min-jun asked in Korean. "It's done. She's packing now. Crying. Yuna is inconsolable." Ji-hoon's hands clenched into fists. "The replacement caretaker?" "There is no replacement caretaker. We both know that." Min-jun's voice was gentle. "Ji-hoona, are you sure about this? There are other ways to protect her." "No." Ji-hoon's voice was absolute. "As long as she's in my life, she's a target. The only way to keep her safe is to make my enemies believe she doesn't matter. That I discarded her like every other temporary convenience. And if she never forgives you, then she lives. Ji-hoon turned to face his oldest friend. That's all that matters. Min-jun was quiet for a moment. You know she'll try to say goodbye to you. Try to understand. Don't let her. If she asks to see me, tell her I've left for a meeting. Keep her away from me until she's gone. Ji-hoon. Please. The word came out broken. I can't see her again. If I see her, I'll break. I'll tell her the truth. And then everything I just did will be for nothing. Min-jun nodded slowly. I'll make sure she gets to the airport safely. And Ji-hoon, the mole in your organization. We're close to identifying them. Find them. Quickly. Ji-hoon's voice went cold. And when you do, I want to handle them personally. Because someone had to pay for this. Someone had to bleed for the fact that Ji-hoon was losing the only woman he'd loved since Yuna's mother. And it might as well be the person who'd made it necessary. 2 hours later, Naomi's car pulled away from the estate. Ji-hoon watched from his surveillance room, the cameras tracking her departure with brutal clarity. She didn't look back. Not once. Just stared straight ahead as Min-jun's men drove her toward the airport. Toward safety. Toward a life without Park Ji-hoon and all the danger loving him entailed. In her lap, she clutched something small. Ji-hoon zoomed the camera in and felt his heart stop. One of Yuna's painted rocks. The one that said, "Stay," in childish letters. Naomi had kept it. Even believing Ji-hoon had used her. Even thinking their love had been manipulation. Even after everything. She'd kept a piece of them. Ji-hoon's control finally broke. He put his fist through the surveillance monitor, glass shattering, blood running down his knuckles. The pain was nothing compared to the emptiness opening inside his chest. "Sir." One of his men rushed in. "Are you?" "Get out," Ji-hoon said quietly. "But your hand." "Get out." The man fled. And Park Ji-hoon sat alone in his surveillance room, surrounded by broken glass and blood and the images of Naomi's car disappearing into Seoul traffic, and finally let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. He'd saved her life. But he'd lost his own in the process. 3 hours later, Min-jun returned. "She's on a plane to Atlanta," he reported. "Safe. Secure. No tails." Ji-hoon nodded mechanically. "And Ji-hoon," Min-jun hesitated. "Yuna is asking for both of you. She doesn't understand why Naomi left. She thinks." He stopped. "She thinks what?" "She thinks you fired Naomi because she made you happy. And she's afraid you'll push her away too if she makes you feel too much." The words hit like physical blows. "I'll talk to her," Ji-hoon said roughly. "What will you say?" "The truth. That sometimes we have to hurt the people we love to keep them safe. And that someday maybe she'll understand." But even as he said it, Ji-hoon knew the real truth. Naomi would never understand. Would never know that his cruelty had been kindness. Would never know that breaking her heart had shattered his own. Would never know that Park Ji-hoon's greatest act of love was letting her go. 6 weeks after Naomi left, Park Ji-hoon stood in Dr. Kim's office and heard the words he'd been praying for since Yuna was born. "Her heart function has stabilized. The surgery we were planning? We can postpone it indefinitely. Maybe avoid it altogether if this improvement continues." Victory. Medical miracle. Everything Ji-hoon had fought for. And all he felt was empty. "Are you certain?" Ji-hoon asked, his voice carefully controlled. Dr. Kim smiled, genuine relief in his expression. "As certain as we can be with a condition like this. Her ejection fraction has improved 20%. The arrhythmias have decreased significantly. Whatever changes you made to her care routine are working, Mr. Park. Keep doing exactly what you're doing." But that was the problem. Ji-hoon wasn't doing anything. The new caretaker, a perfectly competent middle-aged woman named Mrs. Song, followed protocols precisely. Administered medications on schedule. Monitored Yuna's vitals with professional efficiency. She did everything right. Except make Yuna smile. Except bring laughter back to the estate. Except fill the Naomi-shaped hole that had been carved into their lives. That's excellent news, Ji-hoon said, standing. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Mr. Park. The doctor hesitated. I have to ask. Where is Ms. Carter? I expected to see her at this appointment. She was so invested in Yuna's care. The question hit like a blade between the ribs. Ms. Carter's contract ended, Ji-hoon said flatly. She returned to the United States. That's unfortunate. She was exceptional with Yuna. Dr. Kim paused. Though I suppose the results speak for themselves. Whatever you're doing is working. Ji-hoon nodded and left before the doctor could ask more questions. Before he had to explain that Yuna's improvement had nothing to do with what they were doing now, and everything to do with what Naomi had built before. The foundation of trust. Of emotional safety. Of teaching Yuna that life was worth fighting for. All things Ji-hoon was destroying one day at a time. Outside the hospital, Min-jun was waiting with the car. Good news, he asked in Korean as Ji-hoon slid into the back seat. Yuna's stable. Surgery postponed. That's wonderful. Don't. Ji-hoon's voice was sharp. Don't celebrate. Not when we both know what it cost. Min-jun was quiet for a moment as the car pulled into Seoul traffic. You're still convinced you made the right choice? I kept her alive. That's all that matters. Her. But what about Yuna? Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. Yuna is alive too. Improving, in fact. Physically. Yes. But Ji-hoon, she barely speaks anymore. She goes through the motions with Mrs. Song, but there's no joy. No light. She's surviving, but she's not living. She'll adjust. It's been 6 weeks. She'll adjust. Min-jun sighed. And what about you? When will you adjust? Ji-hoon didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, he wasn't adjusting. He was hollowing out. Becoming the empty shell of control and strategy that everyone had always accused him of being. Except now he knew the difference. Now he knew what it felt like to be alive. To feel. To love. And losing that was worse than never having it at all. At the estate, Ji-hoon found Yuna in her room, sitting by the window with one of her painted rocks in her hands. The one that said, "Stay." She'd been carrying it everywhere since Naomi left. Little one, Ji-hoon said softly, entering the room. Dr. Kim says you're doing much better. Your heart is stronger. Yuna didn't look at him. That's good. It means we might not need the surgery we talked about. Okay. The flatness in her voice was devastating. Ji-hoon sat down beside her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. I miss her, Yuna said finally. I know I'm not supposed to. Mrs. Song says I need to focus on getting better. But I miss Naomi. I know. Why did she leave, Appa? Was it because of me? Did I make her tired? Did I? No. Ji-hoon pulled his daughter into his arms, feeling how small she still was despite her improvements. No, little one. You did nothing wrong. Naomi left because... He stopped, the lie catching in his throat. Because you made her, Yuna said quietly. I heard Mrs. Song talking to the guards. She said you fired Naomi. Sent her away. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. Yes. Why? Because I had to. But she made you happy. She made me happy. Why would you send away someone who made us happy? The question was so innocent, so direct, so impossible to answer honestly. Sometimes, Ji-hoon said carefully, we have to make hard choices to keep people safe. And Naomi, she wasn't safe here, Yuna. My world, my life, it's dangerous for people like her. People like her? People who are good, kind, who don't deserve to be caught up in the violence that follows me. Yuna was quiet, processing this with the too-old wisdom of a child who'd seen more than she should. So you hurt her to protect her? She asked. Yes. That's stupid, Appa. Despite everything, Ji-hoon almost smiled. Perhaps. Naomi wasn't afraid of your world. She chose to stay. She chose us. Yuna looked up at him with eyes too knowing for 8 years old. And you chose fear instead of love. That's what Iyama would say if she were here. The words hit like a gunshot. Because Yuna was right. Her mother, Ji-hoon's late wife, had always been braver than him. Had always chosen love even when it was dangerous. Even when it got her killed. And here Ji-hoon was, repeating the same pattern. Pushing away love out of fear. Choosing survival over living. Becoming exactly what he'd sworn he'd never be. Your mother was braver than I am, Ji-hoon admitted quietly. Then be brave now. Yuna's small hand found his. Bring Naomi back. Please. Appa. I need her. We need her. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You love her. She loves you. And you're both being stupid. Yuna's voice cracked. I'm getting better, Appa. My heart is stronger. But what's the point if we're all just going to be miserable anyway? After Yuna fell asleep, Ji-hoon returned to his surveillance room, the place he'd spent countless hours watching for threats, monitoring patterns, trying to control the uncontrollable. The room where he'd first watched Naomi with his daughter and felt his carefully constructed world begin to crack. Min-jun found him there at midnight, staring at blank screens. The Choi Syndicate is effectively dismantled, Min-jun reported. Leadership scattered. Operations shut down. And we found your mole. Ji-hoon looked up. Who? Lee Sang-min. One of your financial advisors. He'd been feeding information to the Choi family for 8 months. Including details about Ms. Carter's movements, her importance to Yuna, Min-jun paused. Her importance to you. Where is he now? Secured. Waiting for your judgment. Ji-hoon stood. Take me to him. Lee Sang-min was in the basement interrogation room, hands bound, face bruised from Min-jun's initial questioning, eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from knowing exactly who Park Ji-hoon was and what he was capable of. Please, Lee begged in Korean the moment Ji-hoon entered. I have a family. Children. I was desperate. They threatened to. You sold information about my daughter to my enemies, Ji-hoon said quietly. Information that led to an attack on my home. That endangered my child. That cost me. He stopped. That cost him Naomi. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never thought they'd actually attack. I thought it was just intelligence gathering. You thought wrong. Ji-hoon pulled out his gun, the same one he'd used to defend his home 6 weeks ago, and placed it on the table between them. Lee's eyes went wide with terror. I should kill you, Ji-hoon said conversationally. Slowly, painfully. Make an example that ensures no one ever betrays me again. Please. But here's what I've learned recently. Ji-hoon leaned forward. Violence is easy. Control is easy. Fear is easy. It's love that's hard. It's mercy that's hard. It's choosing to be better than your worst instincts that's hard. He picked up the gun, and Lee flinched. Then Ji-hoon set it aside. You're going to give Min-jun every detail about your dealings with the Choi family. Every contact. Every piece of information you shared. Everything. Yes, yes, of course. And then you're going to disappear. Out of Seoul. Out of Korea. Take your family and go somewhere I'll never have to see your face again. Because if I do see you, if you ever come back to this city, I won't be this merciful twice. It wasn't mercy. Not really. It was exhaustion. Because Ji-hoon was tired of violence. Tired of control. Tired of being the monster everyone expected him to be. He'd won. The Choi Syndicate destroyed. The mole identified. His daughter's health improved. His empire secure. He'd won every external battle. But internally, he'd lost everything that mattered. Later that night, Ji-hoon stood in Naomi's old room. Mrs. Song had moved in, erasing most traces of its previous occupant. But in the closet, forgotten in the back, Ji-hoon found something that made his breath catch. A notebook. Naomi's handwriting filled the pages. Medical observations about Yuna, yes, but also personal notes. Thoughts. Reflections. Day 15. Yuna laughed today. Real laughter, not the polite kind she gives doctors. I forgot how much a child's laugh can heal. Not just them, everyone around them. Day 23. Ji-hoon doesn't sleep. I hear him in the hallways at night, checking on Yuna even though he has monitors. He doesn't trust technology to keep her safe. Doesn't trust anyone but himself. I understand that fear. I've felt it. Day 31. I'm getting too attached. To Yuna, yes. But also, I can't let myself finish this thought. It's unprofessional. Dangerous. Impossible. Day 45. He looked at me today like I was the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. And I realized with terrifying clarity that I'm falling for a man I have no business loving. A man whose world could destroy me. A man who... The entry ended there. Unfinished. Ji-hoon turned the page and found the last entry, dated the day before he'd pushed her away. I love him. I love his daughter. I love the family we're accidentally becoming. And tomorrow I'm going to tell him. Tomorrow I'm going to be brave enough to choose this impossible, dangerous, beautiful thing. But tomorrow never came. Because Ji-hoon had destroyed it first. He closed the notebook with shaking hands and did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He wept. Not quietly. Not controlled. But with the full, devastating grief of a man who'd sacrificed his happiness for safety and was finally understanding the true cost. He'd won. He'd protected Naomi. Protected Yuna. Maintained his empire. And he'd lost everything that made any of it worthwhile. Control felt empty. Victory felt hollow. And for the first time in his carefully constructed life, Park Ji-hoon realized that surviving wasn't the same as living. That power meant nothing without love. That all his strategic brilliance couldn't solve the simplest, most devastating problem. He'd chosen wrong. The next morning, Ji-hoon made a decision that would either save everything or destroy what little he had left. He called Min-jun into his office and said 5 words that changed everything. Find out where she is. Park Ji-hoon found Naomi in Atlanta on a Thursday afternoon, standing outside a coffee shop in the rain without an umbrella. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. Her natural hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was staring at her phone with an expression that suggested she was trying to decide whether to answer a call or throw the device into traffic. For a moment, Ji-hoon just watched her from across the street. No security detail. No surveillance. No weapons. Just a man who'd flown 7,000 miles to tell the truth to the woman whose heart he'd deliberately broken. The most dangerous thing he'd ever done. It had taken Min-jun 3 days to locate her. Naomi had returned to Atlanta but hadn't gone back to her old hospital job. Instead, she was working at a small community clinic in a neighborhood that made Min-jun's security instincts scream warnings. She's living alone, Min-jun had reported. Small apartment. No social life to speak of. According to her co-workers, she comes in, does her job, goes home. She's surviving, Ji-hoon had finished. Not living. Just like him. Just like Yuna. All 3 of them broken by his choice. If you're going to do this, Min-jun had said, at least take security. Take weapons. Take something. But Ji-hoon had refused. Because he wasn't going to Atlanta as the king of Seoul's underworld. Wasn't going as the dangerous man everyone feared. He was going as himself. Vulnerable. Unarmed. With nothing but the truth and the desperate hope that it would be enough. If she kills me, Ji-hoon had said, I'll deserve it. Now, standing across the street watching Naomi in the rain, Ji-hoon felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not of violence. Not of enemies. Not of losing power. Fear of rejection. Of being too late. Of having destroyed something too thoroughly to repair. But Yuna's words echoed in his mind. Be brave, Appa. So Ji-hoon took a breath, stepped off the curb, and walked toward the woman he loved. Naomi saw him when he was halfway across the street. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering to the wet pavement. And the look on her face, shock, hurt, anger, and something that might have been hope, nearly brought Ji-hoon to his knees. Naomi, he said, stopping a few feet away. Close enough to see her clearly. Far enough to give her space to run if she needed to. You're not here, she whispered. You're not. This isn't real. I'm imagining. I'm here. I'm real. And I need to tell you the truth. I don't want to hear it. Naomi's voice was shaking. I don't want your lies or your manipulation or whatever new game you're playing. It was never a game. Ji-hoon's voice cracked. Naomi, everything I said that day in my office? All of it was a lie. She stared at him, rain streaming down her face, her expression caught between wanting to believe and being terrified to hope. You said you didn't love me, she said. You said I was a convenience. That you'd manipulated me. That. I lied. The confession came out raw. I lied because there was a mole in my organization feeding information to my enemies. Someone who knew you mattered to me. Who knew you were the perfect leverage to use against me. So you pushed me away. So I destroyed you to save you. Ji-hoon took a step closer. I made you believe I was the monster everyone said I was. Made you hate me. Made you leave. Because as long as you were in my life, you were a target. And I couldn't. His voice broke. I couldn't watch another person I love die because of who I am. Naomi was crying now, and Ji-hoon didn't know if it was from the rain or his words or both. You don't get to do that, she said, her voice fierce despite the tears. You don't get to make that choice for me. To decide what I can handle. To break my heart and call it protection. I know. You destroyed me, Ji-hoon. I came back to Atlanta and I couldn't work with children anymore. Couldn't let myself care because I was so afraid of being hurt again. You didn't just push me away. You broke something inside me. Each word was a knife, and Ji-hoon took them all. I know, he said again. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to fix what I broke. If you'll let me. Why should I? Naomi's voice rose. Why should I trust you? Believe you? Give you another chance to. You shouldn't. Ji-hoon's honesty stopped her mid-sentence. You shouldn't trust me. Shouldn't believe me. Shouldn't give me anything. I don't deserve it. Don't deserve you. But Naomi. He closed the distance between them, slowly, giving her every chance to move away. I flew 7,000 miles with no security, no weapons, no plan beyond telling you the truth. I left my empire to come here. Left everything I've built. Because none of it means anything without you. Pretty words, Naomi said, but her voice wavered. Not words. Proof. Ji-hoon reached into his jacket, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a folder. This is everything. Every threat I've neutralized. Every enemy I've eliminated. Documentation proving the mole existed. Proving you were in danger. Proving that pushing you away was the only way I could see to keep you alive. Naomi took the folder with shaking hands, scanning the documents inside. Ji-hoon watched her face as she read. Watched understanding dawn. Watched anger war with relief war with residual hurt. You still should have told me, she said finally. Should have trusted me with the truth instead of making the decision alone. You're right. I should have. I was a coward. I chose control over partnership. Fear over trust. Ji-hoon's voice dropped to a whisper. I chose wrong, Naomi. And I'm here to ask, to beg, for the chance to choose right this time. And what does choosing right look like? It looks like honesty, partnership, trusting you to make your own decisions about risk and safety and whether loving me is worth the danger. He paused. It looks like me being brave enough to let you choose, even if you choose to walk away. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, the rain falling around them, Atlanta traffic humming in the background. Yuna, she asked finally. How is she? Medically. Stable. Better than she's been in years. Ji-hoon's voice softened. Emotionally. Broken. She carries that rock you painted everywhere. The one that says, stay. She asks about you every day. Cries herself to sleep asking why the people she loves always leave. A sob escaped Naomi's throat. She needs you, Ji-hoon continued. Not as a caretaker. As family. As the person who taught her that life is worth fighting for. He took a shaky breath. And I need you. Not to complete me or fix me. But to stand beside me. To challenge me when I'm wrong. To help me be the man my daughter deserves as a father. Ji-hoon. I love you, Naomi Carter. I loved you when I pushed you away. I loved you through 6 weeks of hollow victory and empty control. And I'll love you whether you forgive me or not. Whether you come back or not. Whether you choose this impossible, dangerous life or not. He stepped back, giving her space. The choice is yours. No manipulation. No pressure. Just the truth and my promise that whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Naomi looked at him, really looked at him, and Ji-hoon let her see everything. The exhaustion. The regret. The desperate hope. The love that had brought him 7,000 miles without armor or weapons or anything but vulnerability. You came here unarmed, she said. Yes. In a country where you have no power. No protection. Yes. That's the stupidest thing you've ever done. Yes. A ghost of a smile touched Ji-hoon's lips. You've always made me do stupid things. Made me feel when I'd sworn off feelings. Made me hope when I'd accepted hopelessness. Made me love when I thought I'd buried that part of myself forever. Stop. Naomi held up a hand. Stop being romantic and eloquent and, she took a shaky breath. I need time. I need space to think. It's too much. You hurt me, Ji-hoon. And I can't just, I need time. Take all the time you need. Ji-hoon pulled out a card with a single number written on it. This is my personal phone. Not monitored. Not recorded. Just me. When you're ready, if you're ready, call. And I'll answer. No matter where I am or what I'm doing. Naomi took the card, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity through both of them. And if I decide I can't do this, she asked. Can't forgive you? Can't come back? Then I'll live with that choice. Ji-hoon's voice was steady despite the pain. I'll respect it. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're safe and happy, even if it's from a distance. He turned to leave, the hardest thing he'd ever done, when Naomi's voice stopped him. Ji-hoon. He looked back. Why now? Why come after me now instead of 6 weeks ago? Because 6 weeks ago, I was still choosing fear over love, control over trust, strategy over heart. Ji-hoon met her eyes. It took my daughter crying herself to sleep and telling me I was being stupid. It took reading your journal and realizing you were going to tell me you loved me the day I pushed you away. It took winning every battle that mattered and discovering that victory without you feels like losing. He paused. I came now because I finally learned what you tried to teach me all along. That love isn't weakness. That vulnerability isn't defeat. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is surrender control and trust someone else to catch you. Naomi's breath hitched. So here I am, Ji-hoon continued. Surrendered. Vulnerable. Trusting you to make the choice that's right for you, even if it destroys me. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Naomi standing in the rain with his card in her hand and 6 weeks of hurt warring with the knowledge that he'd just done something impossible. Park Ji-hoon, the king who controlled everything, had given her all the power. And now she had to decide what to do with it. Ji-hoon made it 3 blocks before he had to stop, leaning against a building, shaking with the aftermath of the most terrifying conversation of his life. His phone buzzed. Min-jun, probably, checking if he was still alive. But when Ji-hoon looked at the screen, it wasn't Min-jun. It was a text from an unknown number. I'm not ready to forgive you. But I'm not ready to let you go either. Coffee tomorrow. 2 p.m. Same shop. And Ji-hoon, come alone. No guards. No weapons. Just you. A second text followed immediately. P.S. If you ever lie to me again, I will destroy you in ways your enemies never imagined. Understood. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that this was just the beginning of earning back her trust, Park Ji-hoon smiled. Understood, he typed back. See you tomorrow. And Naomi? What? Thank you. For giving me a chance I don't deserve. Her response came after a long pause. Don't make me regret it. Ji-hoon stood in the Atlanta evening, 7,000 miles from his empire, holding nothing but a phone and the fragile beginning of forgiveness. And for the first time in 6 weeks, he felt something other than emptiness. Hope. The end. Or perhaps, the beginning. Because love, real love, isn't about perfect choices or flawless execution. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it's terrifying. Even when it's dangerous. Even when it means surrendering the control you've built your entire life around. Park Ji-hoon had spent years believing love was weakness. But standing in Atlanta, unarmed and vulnerable, waiting for tomorrow's coffee date with a woman who might still choose to walk away, he finally understood. Love wasn't weakness. Love was the bravest thing he'd ever done. And whatever happened next, whether Naomi forgave him fully or made him work for every ounce of her trust, he'd choose it. Choose her. Choose love. Every single time. Thank you for watching Afro Korean Tales and Stories. If this story stayed with you, there are more waiting here. Subscribe to Afro Korean Tales and Stories for a love that crosses cultures and lingers. Tell us in the comments, what emotion are you leaving this story with?